us for the second and final day of the 6th Annual Southwest Virginia Economic Forum. I'm Douglas Jackson, and I started working with the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development 14 years ago, specifically to work on regional strategies in Southwest Virginia. And one of the real joys of my professional life has been working alongside collaborative, innovative, hardworking leaders in Southwest Virginia. I've been working that the region, in the region, he said, you like each other and communicate well. And boy, I think that really felt good to hear. We also got to see a video on WiseWorks, which was pretty inspiring, and the work that's happening there at UVA Wise. And then we had a fantastic inspirational session with three great entrepreneurs. All right, and maybe we're having audio issues. In the region, he said, you like each other and communicate well. Boy, okay, I think we're back now. But we've got another great lineup today. And let me, before we jump into it, thank our sponsors. We've got presenting sponsors, the University of Virginia's College at Wise and Go Virginia Region 1. Appalachian Power is a corporate sponsor. And our media sponsor is the Business Journal of the Tri-Cities, Tennessee, Virginia. Kicking off our morning is Nancy Whitworth. Nancy recently retired after a long tenure with the city of Greenville, Virginia. Now, when she was there, she was the Director of Economic and Community Development. She served as a Deputy City Manager. She also served as the Interim City Manager. And she was instrumental in establishing some of the public-private partnerships that really fueled the redevelopment process in Greenville. She also serves on a number of boards, including the Community Foundation of Greenville and Prisma Upstate. She's the South Carolina Department of Transportation Commissioner. And currently, she's an advisor with One Spartanburg, focusing on economic development within the city of Spartanburg. And Nancy, we are really looking forward to hearing more about economic development, your philosophy on economic development, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hey, thank you so much, Doug, and it's great to be with you today. Sounds like you had a very interesting group of sessions yesterday, so thank you so much. So I'm going to be talking about thinking strategically, but acting tactfully. Now, what do we mean by that? Well, strategically, I think we all understand the importance of thinking strategically. I mean, that's what we do in our lives and our jobs, in our community involvement. But what about acting tactfully? Well, we can have the most well thought out strategic plan, but in order to be successful, we need to know how to execute that plan, and paramount to any execution of a plan is ensuring that we develop the necessary relationships and partnerships. Anything we do in our lives, we have to work with others. And I don't know about you, but I've never been able to escape difficult issues or situations. But it's how we deal with others that has implications. It's often not what we do as much as how we do it. It's kind of like saying no. It's how you say no that people will remember. It's not always that you said no. So we can take, there are many examples, but what I'm going to do today is take it from the standpoint of redeveloping and transforming a city. I think I just jumped too far. So backing up, Greenville, South Carolina, was a small town. It has definitely grown over the years. But cities have to constantly reinvent themselves in order to prosper. So Greenville set out to differentiate itself by creating a place that's authentic, sustainable, but foremost for people. I think, much like you talked about yesterday, that is always going to be the focus. It was achieved through a very proactive role in making strategic investments and working collaboratively with both the public and the private sectors. And it's evolved from a rundown district into excuse me, I'm having a little trouble with my slide, so I apologize. It's moved from, in its initial as a textile town, to what it is today. Now, I'm going to take you back to when I came to Greenville. As Doug said, I was there a long time. When I came to Greenville, I want you to see some of the images that I began to work with. The top one, a little bit predated me, just a little bit, but what you can see is a main street that had wide lanes of moving traffic, pretty narrow sidewalks, not too many people around, lots of parking lots, not parking garages, parking lots. We had a river. Yep, this was a river. It's what my father would have referred to as a creek, though. We had, within our downtown, in our historic area, we had lots of open land. This happened to be a lumber yard that encompassed about 6 acres. We had a waterfalls. Yes, there was a waterfalls in downtown. The trouble was nobody knew that it was there. There was a vehicular bridge that covered it. And of course, buildings that were not at all inviting. Today, what we have today is, you can take, now these are some from the same images as before. These are the afters. The Main Street has been narrowed down to 2 lanes of moving traffic, diagonal parking, wide sidewalks, but it's the tree canopy that people remember the most. That parking lot that I showed you is now a performing arts center, basically a campus. The river, now this is a little color enhanced. I have to admit the river is not blue, but it is certainly not muddy red as it was before. But the most important thing is not just the river, it's what's around it. And of course, there's a collection of mixed use developments, both public and private partnerships that made this happen. The restaurants, hotels, residential, office, artist studio spaces, but just as important, there is a trail, the Swamp Rabbit Trail, that has been really one of the fundamental, I think, impacts that we have had in downtown. This trail connects up to one of our sister cities, Travelers Rest, about 10 miles away. That lumberyard is now a mixed-use baseball stadium, and yes, there is still a bridge, but it is now a pedestrian bridge. The vehicular bridge is gone, and those buildings that were so uninviting, it is now a hotel, but more importantly, it's public space. So what did it take to make that happen? Well, first and foremost, it takes a mindset and a can-do attitude to control your own destiny. And I think Greenville we were a small city, but we always thought we were bigger than we are, so we acted like we were bigger than we are. And so it's that can-do attitude that I think is important. You have to have a vision and a plan. You have to have a culture of partnerships, an entrepreneurial spirit, and obviously commitment and patience. So let's take a look at vision and plan. Visions must be shared, collective, inclusive. Everybody needs to be at the table. The more that you engage others, the more successful you are going to be. But I have to say, a vision without ability to execute is just a dream. So that's where the plan comes in. Now, you usually think, follow the plan. And I'll say for the most part, that's true. But don't let the plan paralyze you. And what I mean by that is it's just a blueprint. But you need to be flexible to adapt to all of those curveballs, market conditions, pandemics, and other unintended consequences that are going to come your way. If you just so closely follow the plan, you might miss that great opportunity. So once you have the vision and the plan, you need partners. Now, you all know the importance of partners, but effective partnerships have really been the cornerstone of Greenville's success. And fundamental to those partnerships has been establishing trusting relationships that can withstand the test of time. Those images I showed you before were just a few up and down Main Street, throughout the city. Those public-private partnerships have been critical to building things. But I'm going to talk about a little bit more. Partnerships are more than just those big projects. It's about how we go about in our daily lives and how it permeates throughout our whole communities. And so it's partnerships like with our philanthropic partners who've made possible things like the trail, who have made possible the way that we are now working with our communities to really work on affordable housing, which has become a tremendous issue in Greenville. And it's those partnerships with our not-for-profits, but also our custom builders have also stepped to the plate to really look at how we can move this needle a little bit further along. It is our educational partners, much like you have with the University of Virginia at Wise, those strong educational partnerships. Clemson University, for instance, is 30 miles from Greenville, but we've sort of pulled some of Clemson into Greenville. Clemson established their International Center for Automotive Research, which has their graduate programs in automotive engineering, which really goes now beyond just the automobile. As we know, it's more than just the engine that gets you around in a car now and the tires. It's also, Clemson also brought their MBA program and all of the affiliated programs in their business, in their graduate business, down into Main Street. Greenville Technical College opened a Center for Manufacturing Innovation, again, a partnership with Clemson, a partnership with the public sector to really enhance traineeship opportunities. And it's also the faith-based community. One example, and there are many, but a local startup, Mill Community Ministries, which is kind of an entrepreneurial way in and of itself, was an outreach for 2 churches. And now Mill Village Farms, which is a program from Mill Community Ministries, is a youth development program for under-resourced teens through sustainable agriculture, which also supports our culinary efforts. And Village Launch, which is another initiative to equip under-resourced entrepreneurs. So partnerships abound. And next is that entrepreneurial culture. Now, Greenville's inclination for entrepreneurial endeavors has been evident throughout its history, from the early textile mills that began on the banks of the Reedy River to the technologically advanced companies that we have today. But these entrepreneurial endeavors permeate throughout the economy, in real estate and retail, advanced manufacturing, biomedical, restaurants, the list goes on and on. I kind of want to point out a couple, the typical things you think about, co-working space, but one of the initiatives that has been real successful for us is Next. And this resulted from a group of entrepreneurs who came to the chamber, came to the city and said, we want to be able to work with others like us. And so what evolved was Next. And even though there are buildings that were all privately developed, Next Technology Center, Next Manufacturing, Next Domain, it's not about the buildings. That's kind of the hardware. It's what my colleague used to tell me, Nancy, it's about the software that we have to develop. Otherwise, the buildings have really no value. So it's really setting up and talking with entrepreneurs. What is it that you need? And then it became that development of whether it's mentorship, whether it's opportunities to collaborate together, whether it was bringing in venture capital, whatever it took over a period of time, that evolved. And again, it was that entrepreneurial culture, and it's listening and it's taking those risks. And it's also another example is Greenville Technical College, which opened up its Culinary and Hospitality Innovation Center right out of downtown in a very underserved community. We have a huge culinary scene in Greenville. We have probably over 125 restaurants just in downtown alone. But it through this center, we are training those who need to be trained, but we're also creating an opportunity for new restaurants to begin. But it's not just about the typical things you think about. It's also about all of the things that really make a place a place. And that's the restaurants. It's the breweries. It is the coffee houses. It's where people like to gather. And that those entrepreneurs are incredibly important. And I think they're important anywhere, but they have been incredibly important in the city of Greenville. I'll give you just an example. Sobeys. Carl Sobocinski was one of our entrepreneurs that opened a restaurant in downtown Greenville when it really wasn't necessarily the place to open up a new restaurant. And he has been with it for years. But the important thing, he has wonderful restaurants. He's developed new concepts, all kind of close proximity to each other. But the most important thing that Carl did is he developed his employees and allowed them to reach a point where they could take over and become an entrepreneur and take over the restaurant themselves, all the while providing that safety net. So it's those kinds of things. And Carl's not the only, I'm just giving that as an example, but it is that culture that continues to permeate throughout. Now, you have to have that entrepreneurial culture. You have to have the vision, the plan. You have to establish the partnerships. But you also have to recognize that you've got to have commitment and patience. We all know that good things often take time, but oh man, is it hard. It's really hard because you want so much to happen. And a lot is happening. Sometimes we just don't realize it. And so we have to take those moments to really step back and appreciate how far we've come. But I will tell you in Greenville, people think it's kind of, and it has exploded of late, I have to admit. But there were many years that things weren't so great. And I think we all have to realize that every community has its assets and potential. Sometimes we have to look a little harder to find them and work a little harder to realize, but they're there. I think we have to be committed for the long haul. As I said, Greenville, it used to be said that Greenville was a 30-year overnight success. And that's probably not too far from the truth. Remember, there's always a middle. And what I mean by the middle is, I think in the beginning, you get really excited about something. And then the enthusiasm wanes a little bit. And then you're a little ways from realizing that vision that you had. But it's in the middle that requires the perseverance and the focus. Because remember, if you don't get through the middle, you don't get to the other side. So that, I think, is where we have to be all in. The middle requires that if there's ever a time that we need to really go back to our partners and really go back to those relationships that we have established along the way, the middle is the time to do it. And I think it's also important, one of my former mayors, he always had kind of interesting little ways of saying things. But I remember he would say to me, Nance, never forget who brung you to the dance. And I think what he meant by that, I wondered what he meant by that at the time, but I think through the years, what I've realized is that it's important to remember where you came from. It's important to remember those that helped bring things together. It's important to look forward. And so it's like keeping the old, but making the new. Relationships. Never forgetting, though, that the importance of establishing those relationships. And that's where being tactful comes in. One of the things that was important for me is that I was never going to be, in working with others, you often have to put your own personal agenda aside. You have to put your own, most importantly, you have to check your ego at the door, because generally there could only be one in the room at a time, and it certainly shouldn't be yours in order to achieve, I think, what you need to in the long term. The other is don't just follow a checklist. I know we all like to have a checklist of those things that we need to get done. And yes, you do need that. But don't ever make a check and put it aside, because nothing is ever done. You need to constantly go back. And I will tell you, in many of the projects that really those community anchor type projects, like the baseball stadium and an arena and a performing arts center, I will tell you, over the years, those have been enhanced. Once you take your eye off the ball, things that seem to be going really well can falter in the blink of an eye. So it's really important never to assume that everything is done. Always remember that people want to be connected and attached to a place. And I think we've experienced that over this past, what we call our pandemic year, even more than ever. The importance of creating those places where, whether they're the coffee shops, whether they're the public spaces that abound in Greenville, I will tell you. There is a festival, there is something going on all the time, but it's because people want to connect. And whether they're big spaces, small spaces, really creating those opportunities. And also, as I have said before repeatedly, is kind of stay committed to your relationships. And knowing that there's never just one thing that propels a community. It's all of the small efforts that are all working together that ensure that the community is going to really move in the direction that we all want it to move, to be impactful and sustainable. And just some final thoughts, kind of wrapping up here. Success requires strong relationships, and the strength of those relationships will always be tested. The key to passing those tests are always going to be dependent upon the trust that we all develop with each other. And so with that, I will turn it over to Doug.
Nancy, thank you. Thank you for that presentation, which I think was a mini course. I think I'm going to end up going back and watching this and going through those points pretty closely. And we do have a couple of questions for you. One, you talked about both the culture of partnership and you talked about the culture of entrepreneurship. And a culture is community wide. And so we've got a question. How did Greenville residents and stakeholders react to the changes in the city moving forward? Was there any hesitancy? And if so, how did you handle that?
Okay, good question. And yes, it was a mini, I could write a book, but yes, you're always going to have people who are not quite sure. And so I think the thing that Greenville really tried to do, and I admit, not always successfully, but you just have to keep trying, is creating opportunities to engage people. And I think being able to listen to what people want to see. And sometimes people don't know. And so I think it's the more opportunities to create, to engage people, to truly listen to people. Now, everybody's not always going to agree. Don't get me wrong. Everybody's not going to come to this big kumbaya. And I think the toughest part was the part that I talk about, the middle part, because that's the critical part. Everybody's excited in the beginning, and yeah, this is great, but nobody, few people, I won't say anybody, few people have patience. They want it done, and they want it done, man. But listening and creating all of those opportunities. And of course, now there's so many ways to engage. You know, we engage not only directly, but with media, which sometimes is good and maybe sometimes not so good. The other thing is that I always encourage particularly in community and economic development, our groups. Sometimes we always get criticized, and I was like, put the most critical people we have, put them on the task force, put them on the committee. And it was like, because it's important to hear. And you know what? No one is always right. So from that becomes great ideas.
Fantastic. As a leader, you mentioned that middle part being so difficult. Do you have any tips for helping people through that middle part, keeping them with you?
Well, I think at that part, number one, I think you have to have a tough skin. Remember, nothing is ever personal. So that's important. I think that part is where you really want to, that communication becomes important. But I think it's also, you need to be looking for trying to get those small successes. And so the small things, whatever that is, really celebrate that and just keep reinforcing the fact that it's going to take time. But there's no easy way. Sometimes you just have to slog through it.
Well, I know this transformation was many projects with many phases, but was there a point where you said, yes, we're really getting there, we can see this happen, or where you felt the community make that shift?
Yeah, I think, and kind of looking back, and you know, I never anticipated staying any one place as long as I did. But Greenville has almost been like about every 5-6 years or so, it's like a different city. And so, you know, kind of going through those, I think the initial point where I thought, okay, we can breathe a little bit easier. I think it's when we had this very iconic building in an old hotel that had been closed, the Poinsett Hotel, that had been closed for years. Everybody had fond memories of this hotel. And I think the point that we were able to put together a public-private partnership to renovate that hotel, and it was also in a key spot. I mean, there was a demarcation line on Main Street, and this was past that demarcation line. I think once that happened, I think the community really began to say, you know what, you know, we might just have this. So we might just have this. And I think it was, I kind of mentioned a restaurateur, but I think it was that restaurant which opened across from this vacant hotel even before there was a glimmer of hope. But I think seeing that, I think that was a real pivotal point.
Great. We've got another question. Were there any times when something got pulled through? How was trust rebuilt after that?
Yeah, well, yes. I think, there were some hiccups along the way. I think one was a use that we felt and had been recommended as a use that really wasn't a good fit. It was a painful process to go through that. I think, it's always the way you do things, and maybe that could have been done a little bit differently. But that was the point that brought a lot of consternation to a lot of folks. And so getting through that, I think, believe it or not, removing a vehicular bridge off from the over the falls was a little bit initially. Why would we want to take down a perfectly good bridge that connected? And it was a connection. But I think once people saw it, that it was like, and that had to be pushed a little bit. Oh, wait, now we get it. So yeah, it's not, there are many times when you just kind of have to keep going, but it's always important. And this is where those partnerships matter the most, because for the public sector, and in fact, the public sector had to move in for River Place, which is the right on the river, which is a really iconic mixed-use development. Our public officials had to take a very tough position of condemning property and being sued for it and going through that. But they stayed the course. But they stayed the course because they had established partnerships throughout the community, philanthropic, private, that helps underlie and undergird taking those kinds of risks.
Yeah, so the strength of those partnerships, the allies across the community, time watching something play out and prove itself. Any other tips on building trust after that?
Well, and I think the primary thing is to be forthright with people. And I think the more that we communicate, I think sometimes we all want to be cheerleaders, and that's appropriate. But I think the reality, letting people know that this is not going to be an easy path, or the more that we can establish that trust, that I trust you to tell me the truth. Even if it's not what I want to hear. It's like I said before, saying things, it's not so much what you say sometimes, it's how you say it. And I think that's incredibly important.
How about demographic shifts with all this transformation? How's the city changed?
Well, the city has changed in one aspect by just the sheer growth. So the population numbers have really increased. There are more residential developments in downtown Greenville, and more and more and more. Now there's a downside to that, and that downside to that is affordability. That is an issue that we are wrestling with. And I know it's something in working with the One Spartanburg, and that's something they've got very much on the front end. I wish, because our growth was just so rapid in Greenville, that we could have gotten a little bit better handle on that before it got to a critical point. So that's the part that's changed, that we're really having to work hard to focus on.
And it's not the only community dealing with that. And hopefully we're learning across the country as we improve our communities, how we're able to keep housing affordable and keep long-term residents in place.
You know what? I think we all have the same problems. And they are all, I think, indicative of cities that are growing. And so if you have cities that are growing, you're also going to be faced with those challenges and those unintended consequences of that growth.
Mm-hmm. But you've got a plan. And if you can plan, I love how you said you can't stick to the plan completely. You've got to be able to step away from it, but you've got to have that plan able to help guide you. And part of that planning process in the beginning, I love it, is from that the software development. And the software development is not just the entrepreneurs who are part of your entrepreneurship strategy, but like you mentioned, the civic organization, the faith-based organizations, the real community. And those are our partners in creating this.
Yeah, and if you don't have all of those partners, I don't think you'll ever have a complete city. You will never. I mean, and it's the essence again of a place.
All right. Well, let me just see if we have any more questions coming in. I really appreciate the time. I feel like we met a cousin. We would love to interact with you a lot more. And as we're going through our path as a region, learning more from other communities, and we really appreciate your candor, your style, and your time today.
Well, you're quite welcome. And I love cities. I love communities. And I think that working together, we can all share. The more that we share, I think the fewer, I know personally, the fewer missteps that we have along the way. And it's always good to know somebody's in the trenches with you too.
Great. Well, thank you again.
You're quite welcome. It's great to be with you.
And as Nancy mentioned, advancing a regional economy requires an all-hands approach. We had heard about the institutions, we are the civic organizations. As she said, if everyone's not involved, we're not going to get where we need to go. We want to thank those partners who are sponsoring today's events. The presenting sponsors are the University of Virginia's College at Wise, Go Virginia Region 1, our corporate sponsor, Appalachian Power, and the Business Journal of the Tri-Cities, Tennessee, Virginia, who's our media sponsor. Thank you for your ongoing investment in the region. Similar to yesterday, we've got two giveaways today. First, I am learning to speak emoji, and I want you to help me. Your challenge to win it, for a chance to win the prize, is to drop an emoji in the comments that describes your favorite Virginia travel destination. So, if I was going, if it was, say, a mountain, maybe I would have a mountain emoji. But look at your keyboard on your phone, try and upload an emoji in the comment section, and you'll be entered. If you can't find the emojis or you don't use those a lot, you can just type the name of the destination in the comment section, and you will be included in the drawing. And while you're doing that, let me tell you about the gift. The gift is from our sponsor, Virginia Tourism Corporation. We really appreciate it, VTC. They provided a summer vacation pack. And that vacation pack includes a Virginia is for Lovers beach towel, a hat, and sunglasses. And this vacation pack will have you ready for your summer vacation. And there are so many great Virginia travel destinations and so many great Southwest Virginia travel destinations. So to be entered to win, enter your emoji or your comment. And let me see if I see any emojis coming up. Oh, I see horsies. Yeah. So I see horses. Oh, a wave. I'm trying to think of what I would put on there. I might put a hiking boot. I might put an umbrella. This is me learning how to speak emoji. Oh, and we've got sunglasses and a party face. And bicycle and a boot. Somebody's with me. Luke, Andrew, and I are going to go hiking together. All right. Well, thanks a lot for entering those emojis. They're fantastic. And I'm going to keep learning emoji. make sure that you tune in all the way through the day, and we're going to announce the winners. And you can keep entering your emojis. Oh wow! I think I saw a Sasquatch, or as we call him, the wood booger. I think I saw him. I think I just saw him in there, and a bicycle. Keep entering your emojis and have fun with it, and you'll be entered in the contest. And we're not closing it yet, so keep on entering them. And the magical media team from UVA Wise will randomly select one of those. We're building on Nancy's presentation by hearing from some local projects that are transforming communities. And those local projects require local leaders. And we've got one local leader ready to host our next session, and it's Ken Heath. Ken, I consider a friend, and he's a native of Marion, Virginia. And he has served for a while now as the community's Director of Community and Economic Development. And that tenure has been filled with some accomplishments. So they were designated an historic district from the Commonwealth of Virginia. They were named a National Main Street Community. In 1995, they were accepted as a Virginia Main Street Community. And he started Pop-Up Marion. And that's an entrepreneur development program that really needs no introduction, like Ken. And it resulted in his hometown being named the Small Business Community of the Year by the US SBA. And it launched a movement across Virginia of using business plan competitions for communities to help organize their entrepreneurial ecosystem and to get businesses started. So Ken, I'm going to turn over the session to you.
Doug, always good seeing you. Thank you so much, my friend. You're always welcome here in Marion, and I appreciate the kind introduction. Welcome, everybody, to the Economic Summit. This is an exciting day for all of us. And we got some great panelists here and some great discussion to follow. Let's first start out with another brother of mine, Keith Barker, over in the city of Galax, another Main Street community. Keith graduated in 1987 with a Bachelor of Architecture degree from Virginia Tech, and is a Virginia licensed architect. He's a certified building official and most recently completed the required training to manage VDOT locally administered projects. Keith has managed a bunch of projects within the city and outside of the city, including the Galax Downtown Revitalization Project, Callaway Street Housing Project, North Central Housing Project, Bottom Area Housing Project, VDOT projects, and general construction projects. Keith serves on numerous boards, including the Blue Ridge Crossroads Economic Development Authority, Virginia Industrial Advancement Alliance, and many other regional boards. Keith, great to have you on the panel this morning.
Thank you, Ken. It's really good to be here and good to see you again.
I think we have a video we're going to show and give a little highlight of what we're going to talk about today. You're going to introduce, I guess, the Devon Furniture Project.
Galax is home to me. I've lived here for 52 years, and it's about the people helping other people. The vision for this property is a cornerstone for the community. It's a way to bridge between the past and the future. It's a need for the community. This building, rather large building, can house a lot of different types of industries, from retail, hospitality, indoor practice fields, restaurants, all these different types of things. Each one of those representing jobs and ways to help tie into the community, support it financially, but also to support it in ways that they need. Each one of these businesses is going to need support, and they sort of thrive working together, interconnected, and helping to support each other.
My name is Craig Wilson. I'm a planner with Summit Design and Engineering, and I've been leading our consultant team as we've worked with the Vaughn family, the city staff, and the city council here in Galax about the future of this building. At 408,000 square feet, you can do a whole lot of things in one project. We talk about mixed-use projects a lot of times, and it's simply, a few apartments and one little retail outlet. This truly is a mixed-use project, which, as the leaders of the community would like to see, will have so many uses that it all by itself can be a hub of activity for the city of Galax, just because of the various components of the building and how they are used. The building in front of me would be a retail on the ground floor, apartments on the 2 upper floors. The building immediately right here would be the hotel. This would be the lobby entrance, 2 floors of rooms above. Both the wings going down this way would also be hotel space. Behind this end of the building, there's a very large steel and concrete building that will be a business incubator. Behind the hotel, there is a conference room, as well as a performance space and a restaurant. And then in the newest building, built in 1995, which is a 2-story engineered steel building, be indoor recreation space. Could be all kinds of different things, even including a climbing wall because of its height.
Well, I think this project really sits at the intersection, in my mind, of opportunity and need. There's a need on one side, the opportunity on the other side. I think the combination of those creates a natural time for us to move forward. I think
Go.
Okay, I think you've just seen the video for the TG Vaughn project, and a council member and our consultant and one of the owners of the property. Galax was approached a few years ago, and I say that maybe 2 to 2.5 years ago, by members from Vaughn Furniture Company. They've been trying to sell this facility for probably 8 to 10 years. It's a 400,000 square foot building that was built originally in the 1920s and then had additions put on every decade up through probably the 1990s. It's a very large facility, multi-floor, 3 floors with it. And when you start to look at a project like that, it kind of gets out of the scope of maybe local government people and what we can do. So we actually approached Virginia Tech with this project. We were able to talk to some contacts I had down there with the Virginia Tech Department of Economic Development, and we were able to actually make a master level class. Some students that were trying to do their master's degree in economic development, they did a series of studies and comparisons for us on this property to see what could occur there. And we know that we could have anything from residential facilities, apartments or condominiums, to boutique hotels, to restaurants, to outfitters, to even indoor recreation space, based on how large some of these areas are. From there, we've been able to work with our local planning district, Mount Rogers Planning District Commission, and DEQ, and we've been able to start complete the phase 1, phase 2 environmental with grant funds. And then we were able to secure funding from Opportunity Appalachia to do a more detailed market analysis. Since we've begun all of this, we've had a group of local investors that have purchased this property from Vaughn Furniture Company that satisfies all of the stockholders. And we're now working with that group on an organizational structure and how they can partner with the city. While the city will more than likely never own this building, that's really not our intent. We do know that without our participation, tax incentives, some ability to maybe recruit other grants and things like that, that the project would be very hard to overcome the cost on. It's about a $90 million renovation. We have proceeded or completed the first couple steps to have the property designated as a historic structure. So historic tax credits will come into play. It's in an opportunity zone. It's in an enterprise zone. And we know that it could be available for new market tax credits. So we think by the time we combine these with some local incentives, it can become a very fruitful investment for a group or an individual or the right company. So that's kind of where that project is right now. And we're very excited about it. And we are continuing to commit resources and funds to it as we progress.
Wonderful, wonderful job, Keith. Always great things in Galax. You're known for bluegrass, for furniture, and now for innovation. And we'll be talking more about that in just a few seconds. Also on the panel today, Kim Ross. Haven't had the pleasure of meeting Kim in person, but have talked with her here on Zoom several times and can't wait to meet and shake and howdy with her. she is certainly an inspiration for us. She's been in Bluefield, West Virginia for about 20 years. She has a bachelor's degree in business administration from Bluefield State College. In 2012, she used her skills to launch a business development company that specializes in branding, marketing, and public relations. Her desire to support and expand the potential of her local economy led her to start Mount Terra LLC, a real estate development company. Kim uses her love of people along with her business skills to help build a better local economy in Appalachia. Kim will be here in a second, but let's roll her video and see what she has to tell us before we come back and chat.
Hi, my name is Kim Ross, and I am the owner-founder of Mount Terra LLC. We're a real estate development company, and I'm also the lead of this project, which is Logan Suites, right here at 100 Logan Street. Bluefield, Virginia is so special because, one, it's here in the mountains, and two, it's part of what's a micropolitan area of the two Virginias. So it shares, actually has a neighboring city in another state of West Virginia called Bluefield as well. The vision for these two buildings are, this location of 100 Logan Street is going to be Logan Suites. So it's more of a lodging facility. We're looking at either apartments or apartment/boutique hotel style, where we can have long-term and short-term housing to meet the demands of the community. Right now, the town really wants a place for people to stay. They want their downtown active beyond 5 o'clock. So we figure we can't go wrong either way, whether people are living here or whether people are visiting and staying short term. The other location at 416 Virginia Avenue, it is going to be used as a multi-use facility and opening up a lot of space and bays for retail businesses, because we understand that as a town grows and expands in their downtown, they really need places for people to be able to put their businesses and their vision. So the town is ready for this project in particular for lodging, because they say there isn't any lodging here, and they're exactly right. Right here in the town itself, there is no lodging for tourists. So we're looking forward to meeting that need and meeting that demand.
Hi, I am Kim Ross from Mount Terra LLC here in the Bluefield area. And me and my husband, we've been here in Bluefield for, I'm going to say 20 plus years. Well, maybe almost 20 years. And we love our local economy. We have been involved in various projects, boards, volunteer. I mean, we just want to see our local economy thrive. And for those of you who already know about the Bluefield area, it used to be really booming at one time. We had a vibrant economy. Coal obviously was the driving force. And we'd like to see it get back to vibrant, very vibrant. And I'm not necessarily putting all of the weight on coal to bring us back there, but we can diversify and just make it a lovely place to continue growing, building, and nurturing people. So what happened was my husband and I, we found out about the federal government opening up this opportunity zone investment to where they would go into underutilized, somewhat distressed communities and areas. And they started offering incentives for investors to come in and, make it vibrant again. And we were like, so excited. So we looked here in the Bluefield area, and Bluefield, Virginia, their almost entire, I'm going to say downtown Main Street area is an opportunity zone. So we got extremely excited, and we went downtown and started looking at the buildings, and we saw that there were several vacant properties that could obviously benefit tremendously from this. We looked to see how our community would benefit and different business models and ideas that would fit. And we also noticed that Bluefield, Virginia had an amazing momentum already. The town, they're doing wonderful. They have a big vision. There are new businesses already there, and that we're having community rally events that we joined. And so we set out, and here we are now. So we're really excited. We are moving forward as much as we can, as quickly as we can with these projects. There have been some speed bumps, but we might get into some of those here in just a little bit.
Fantastic. We'll be talking about your project and Keith's project a little bit more. One of the things we talked about when we kind of pre-planned is how we're celebrating Southwest Virginia. We're celebrating communities, we're celebrating great projects, but we're also talking about things that people can scale and use in their communities. You know, Doug talked a little bit about our pop-up program here in Marion. You guys have some great projects, but how do we come back and do some things in our communities that we also can replicate in other communities? So what are some of your favorite projects the rest of us can steal? Kim, we'll start with you.
Can you repeat that, please?
Sure. What kind of projects have you worked on that the rest of us can steal? We've got some great projects out in communities.
Oh, well, the current one that we're working on is we're trying to transform an old school building into a livable space. And we've toyed around with two ideas. One, either more like short-term kind of apartment or long-term apartments, or a boutique hotel style. That's one thing. And, you know, that's a good way to utilize a large building that is especially historic. And people want that. They want to go stay in a nice quality place that's built strong, and that's one thing. Another thing that communities can do is look at some of these large buildings that were maybe old warehouses and that are even in their downtown, because we're focused on Main Street and downtown, and convert them into a multi-use. So, you know, you can have several buildings. You can block out sections and have 4 or 5 different shops versus having one huge plant that might used to exist.
Keith, let's talk to you. What are some of the ideas you worked on in Galax and around the region that we could steal from?
Well, we stole one from you, which was your pop-up Marion. We did a Jump Galax program, so helped some small businesses with that. It was a great program. You know, but when I was hired, one of the first projects I worked on was a housing project, Callaway Street Housing Project, a community development block grant from DHCD. And I know those are competitive, but, you know, funding does flow with those, and it comes into Southwest Virginia. And if you can help somebody with housing projects, that's an immediate improvement to their situation. And we're completing, I think, our 5th project right now. And you ride through this little neighborhood, and in one block, there's 5 brand new houses beside of each other. And we've got people that are not going to have to pay for those houses with some of the new protocols that DHC has put out. So, I mean, we've done good work with that. One of our favorite projects are really inspirational. We're working on right now, and it's kind of what Kim talked about. We've got an old grocery store here in town. It's about 10,000 square feet. We started working with a local nonprofit called God's Storehouse, who does food distribution. We were able to help them last year with some of our CARES Act money. We funneled about $135,000 to them. They bought meals from local restaurants, which supported those restaurants, and they gave those meals to local families. We've been able to create a really vibrant partnership with them. And when this building's been for sale and they were really looking for something, our Galax City Council decided to buy that building. So we've bought it. We're going to own it through our Industrial Development Authority. We've done our first application to ARC, Appalachian Regional Commission, and the governor has recommended funding for that for renovation of the project, $500,000. We have a series of other grants going in. And the end of this, we called it Project Light because these individuals are trying to, or this group of volunteers are really trying to help some of the more disadvantaged individuals in our community. They're doing faith-based drug counseling. They're doing job skills training. They're going to do small business assistance or planning. They're going to do daycare when needed. And we're going to have rental offices for people that want to start up businesses. But their core service, they're going to feed people. We're going to create a large space and a workable kitchen where they can do that. And rather than working out of the basement of an old church on Main Street, they're going to have a 10,000 square foot renovated building at no lease for 5 years, pending us getting the grants to do the renovation. So it's a very exciting project. It does take a little bit of local investment with that, but it's more staff time than anything. So we're very excited about that.
Excellent, excellent. Kim, let's start out with you talking about funding from the private sector. we've talked about pots of money on the state and federal levels that we have used for kickstarting transformative projects. On the private side, what other funds and resources have you used?
Well, that is probably one of the most challenging parts when you are working on private sector, investments. It can get a little bit challenging. We're trying to keep the debt as low as possible. However, we have reached out and considered some banks. The only thing about it is some of these banks that are not within our footprint or in this area, they don't know the area, and trying to describe to them, hey, this is what we have. We have 2 colleges here. We have this, we have this. They're like, well, they might not be as, I'm going to say apt to just take our word for it. So we've had to go through a little bit more, feasibility and just explaining our situation more. So as far as the funding, it's out there, but it does require a little bit more, I'm going to say preparation and explaining it, because oftentimes you're talking to people who are not local.
When you're talking, let's stay on that just a second. When you're talking to banks in Atlanta or New York or places far off, and unfortunately, the view they tend to have of Appalachia is a very different view than what we have. As a matter of fact, I was over. I've told this story several times at a meeting, and there was somebody had come down from Northern Virginia, and they were convinced that they couldn't buy gasoline once they got off the interstate, that we didn't have gasoline in their tanks. And this was not that many years ago. So the challenge is real for people to understand that we have exciting, vibrant, very productive communities here throughout Southwest Virginia. And as a private entrepreneur that has reached out to banks outside the area, what have you found to be the most successful in telling them the story for them to understand that, yes, Appalachia and Southwest Virginia is a great place to invest in?
Well, one thing is that we do pull some from the past, like, hey, this is how it was. And in the Bluefield area in particular, I like to use this term that we kind of have, it used to be urbanized, more urbanized than it is now. It is rural. However, some of the infrastructure, the way that it was set up, you can tell that it used to be way more vibrant is one word, populated is another word. Like I said, the 2 colleges, I really use those a lot because they're both 4-year colleges. One is in Virginia and it's Bluefield College. The other one is in West Virginia, it's Bluefield State College. But if you really want to get some good exercise, you could walk from one to the other. So, I use that playing off of being right here on the state lines. That's also another kind of benefit, using the interstate 77 and Highway 460. So those are the things that we use a lot to say, hey, the opportunity is here. We just need someone to invest.
Thank you, Keith. I know that you also share the 77 corridor with Kim on the other side of the mountain. And I'm sure that's an asset for you guys as well. But have you run into projects where you're looking for private investment and you've had a struggle in getting them to understand that Galax, just like the rest of Southwest Virginia, is a great place to invest your resources?
Well, I think recruiting businesses or industries, we're always going to face that. But that's compounded with workforce and everything else. But, from where Kim's on the private sector side and I'm on the government side, it's just a little bit different from us. We're not really going out for private funding quite as much. Most of our resources tend to be grants or programs or other funding sources that are made available maybe to local governments only, and they're not, unfortunately, at times available for the private sector. So we explore everything we can. It doesn't mean we don't try to go for private donations or private funds when possible. But as you're well aware, being in Southwest Virginia, trying to get folks to understand or from elsewhere that, we've got a hospital and we've got schools and we've got a water plant and we've got a sewer plant and we've got everything else. So
and we wear shoes.
Yes, yeah, that's right. So,
and those are some tough stereotypes, and that's a subject for a completely different conference, I'm sure. But it fits into exactly what we're talking about here today as we reach out to the challenges for people moving here, visiting here, locating their businesses and industry here, it makes it more of a struggle than certainly we all believe that it needs to be. Keith, let's talk funding. You mentioned earlier some of the funds that you have used, Enterprise Zone, Opportunity Zone. We have found Mount Rogers Planning District Commission just to be a godsend for us in the projects we work on. I know you have as well. And we encourage folks that are in local government, if you haven't reached out to your PDC, certainly to do that. I know that Jim Baldwin over at Lennowisco, those guys do a great job. So we are really blessed in Southwest Virginia for the challenges we've just talked about. On the other side of that is to have groups like the Planning District Commissions that can come in and offer tremendous help in writing those grants and finding those sources of federal money. Talk a little bit about some of the funds that you have used. I know you mentioned historic tax credits and a couple of others. Are there anything that we haven't talked about you'd like to?
Well, I would obviously, always say go back to the various funding agencies and see what they can do to help. A lot of times you might not know the program, but if you'll talk to them, they'll be happy to kind of enlighten you with what you might be able to do. Our last two housing projects, we selected these areas. The housing was almost secondary. We had flooding infrastructure issues in there. So every time it rained, it flooded in these neighborhoods. And when we started to look at, ways to address that or mitigate it, they're just unbelievably expensive. And we were able to partner up or match funding from a community development block grant. We did a comprehensive housing project that had housing, commercial, and infrastructure. We matched that with VDOT funds for revenue sharing. And we're able to do a $1.6 million stormwater project with no local funds. So, when we start looking at opportunities, that's where we see, is there a way for us to stack these different funding entities? Mount Rogers was a contributor to that project also in terms of the construction funds. So we've used those. We'll look for free sources. I talked about Virginia Tech and their Department of Economic Development. They've done hotel studies for us. They've done the TG Vaughn plant study for us, and they've done others. I know they've done studies for others. I've got a meeting after this one with Virginia Industrial Advancement Alliance, and they've been doing a large study for that group too. They'll award you a grant, and basically you can have those studies done for no cost. But Mount Rogers Planning District, ARC, Appalachian Regional Commission, but again, there's a lot of them that are available on the local government side. The God Storehouse and Project Light, we knew we had to step in to help make that project successful, but long term, we see the benefit to the community in a whole. And when we start looking at maybe are there planning funds available or other opportunities, they're available to us as long as we own the building, but not necessarily to them. So that's why we've got to step in and be a good partner with them.
And also public-private partnerships. I know you use some of those as well.
Absolutely. We've done some, that's what that project will be. But, we've been able to solicit funds from private individuals or companies as we've gone through projects. We did a woodworking shop for Chestnut Creek School of the Arts, which is it's a facility that Galax owns. There's a nonprofit side to it. They do a lot of the cultural arts around here. And by cultural arts, I mean, they'll do music and dance and things that are historic to our region. We looked at a woodworking shop a few years ago. We were able, again, to do one of those projects that had no local money in it. We were able to match Appalachian Regional Commission funds. We were able to get tobacco funds to actually help with that. They agreed that there may be some job skills training. But when we put that project out to the public, our director was able to raise, I think it was $75,000 or $80,000 in less than 30 days from private contributions. So if you find a project that excites your community, don't hold it to yourself. There may be people out there with means that are definitely willing to write a check and to help you with that. And, we don't mind reaching out to folks. We had one of our local citizens that she started an endowment with Wytheville Community College because she couldn't find a brick mason and a plumber to come to her house. So, she gives $200,000 to a community college to help start some programs. We're not afraid to knock on the door if we have to say, by the way, we've got a really great project. Are you willing to help us too? So,
excellent advice. Kim, you've done a tremendous amount of stuff in Bluefield, and I know the folks there appreciate it. We appreciate it all Southwest Virginia as we all continue to grow our communities. but there got to be some dragons out there you have yet to tame, some things you want to get a hold of, you haven't been able to do just yet. What are some of those?
Well, yes. Thanks, Ken, for asking that question. And Keith, I'm taking notes from what you're saying because, there's things he said, if you don't share some of these projects, there might be some local people that really want to help, and don't keep it to yourself. So that's a note that I'm having to put down right here. As far as dragons and all of that, wolves, yes, we have encountered some strange difficulties that we had no idea were going to happen. And I have to give a shout out to Opportunity Appalachia because they have, talk about a godsend. They have been such a blessing to us in helping us move forward. And also the town of Bluefield has been great as well. Now, some of those setbacks are, we started looking at the properties, they are privately owned. And I'll tell you, one of them, I sought out looking at, then the owner passed away in the process. Then things went on to a whole nother, oh my goodness, it just ended up being, it seemed like it was getting further away from us instead of coming closer to us. Also, when we initially started, one of the properties we were looking at, we kind of got outbid. Another company bought it, tore down the building structure, and then rebuilt, which ends up being a blessing to the community, but it was still a hurdle that we had to, maneuver around. But really working with a lot of these properties, they are privately owned. I think they might have been in the hands of the owners or the families for a long time, and they haven't been utilized. So it's a process going in, the trust of them knowing that that it's in good hands and we have good intentions for it, and that they don't have to move too quickly to separate, because people, they store things in their vacant properties. And so I'm going to say that's probably the biggest hurdles that we've had, is completely acquiring the properties easily.
Absolutely. And we get that challenge here as well. We find that, especially if somebody finds you're interested, the price tends to go up sometimes. So that makes it a challenge too. Keith, what about you, my friend? You've been doing this for a long time. There got to be some things out there that you just absolutely would love to do if you had the time, money, and resources to do. What are some of the things you've missed, and maybe we can help brainstorm and help figure out how to fix it?
Well, I think you said the three things: time, resources, and money, which are we have a lot of, sometimes we have time in local government, but resources and money are the things that elude us. And, for me, it's probably the things that I've not been able to accomplish in my career here have been some of the infrastructure pieces that I know we need. Galax, like every other older community, you've got old things. You got old water lines and old sewer lines and old stormwater and old this and old that. And they tend to take up a lot of your time, that you'd rather focus on more creative projects or more community visible projects. I tell, one of the biggest projects we did was the stormwater project on that bottom area, housing project. And they've been talking about that. I've been here almost 29 years. And I remember some of my first council meetings, they talked about it, and we were finally able to solve it. So, one of the biggest projects I've done is underground and nobody knows about it. So that's just how it goes. But I the things I'm excited about are the ones we have going on now. We've got the Project Light, we've got the TG Vaughn property. We've got a 65-acre parcel out here in town that we're working with the planning district right now on some studies on it for a housing project. And we're like every other Southwest Virginia community that's seeing a population decline. We've had some work done, and we're going to try to build or provide parcels for 145 houses. We're going to give those lots away. If you're low to moderate income, you get a free lot. Or if you're a teacher that's coming to Galax, you get a free lot. If you're an entrepreneur, you're going to get a free lot. So we're going to try to do that. And when we do that, it raises our tax revenue, but it raises our population and raises our support for everything else, from schools and hospitals and other local businesses. So there's some neat ideas out here. We're just still working on them.
Let's talk about some of those neat ideas and the challenges that we face. We all talk about how Southwest Virginia, we're kind of, in a lot of ways, an island unto ourselves. We're closer to 4 or 5 or 6, depending on where you are, state capitals, than we are to our own. And many times it really feels like that. But how do we move from this mindset of scarcity that we have kind of had to embrace over the years, where things aren't nearly as prosperous as Kim mentioned earlier when all our communities were much more populated and much more vibrant as far as financial resources, to an outlook of bounty, because we do have the outdoor recreation. We have a great stock of entrepreneurs. We have a great stock of people and investment of a mindset of people who want to see Southwest Virginia to grow. Instead of the litany that we talk about all the time on the negative side, you've seen in the national media, drug and alcohol addiction, poverty, those kind of things. How do we change that narrative by leading the discussion as community leaders with our assets? And then how do we support each other in doing so? And Kim, I'll let you start. You're the entrepreneur of the group. How do we change that when you're talking with folks out there and get them to understand all the assets we have here, and how can we all work together to help amplify that?
Okay, well, actually, one of the things is, and I'm going to speak from a local non-government person, is if you are in your local area, start to not only research the history, that is very important, and just look around. And if you travel with your eyes open and see, oh, that would be awesome in our community. That would be nice where we live. And then notice that your neighbors, like in areas that we live in Southwest Virginia, our community neighbors travel outside of our area for certain things. So start to see, well, if they're traveling, it's probably because we don't have it, but it's obviously something that they would like, a need or a want. So I look at things like that. And also, Ken, COVID taught me a huge lesson of how much people want to get to places like where we are when crazy things happen. So we need to go ahead and start building now, because crazy things could happen again. And we want to be that place where people know we're consistent, we are solid, and we're safe. So those are things for the community members. You don't have to be like a huge investor to have an idea, to see to look through a different lens and start to envision your community prospering and vibrant.
Thank you. It goes exactly with a lot of thoughts we use here in this office. There was a book several years ago written by a lady, and she and her husband moved from Waco, Texas to Blacksburg, and she was talking about how when she first moved to Blacksburg that she thought, she had moved to a really small town. For us, Blacksburg's a pretty big city, but for her, it was a really small town coming from Waco. And she felt really disenfranchised until she finally realized that you are where you make yourself to be. And she got involved in her community. She got involved in her church groups and community groups and immersed herself in the culture and her family in the culture, and ended up loving it. And it's a whole philosophy of make the most of where you are. And we need to work together to empower ourselves, each other, and our communities to be able to understand that we do have a great area of the country to live in. I appreciate your comments. Keith, what about you? What do you think that
Well, I'll agree.
We can do to help each other continue to grow?
Well, I think your comments are right on point. I think when we look at things here, and what we try to get our staff and our council and even our community to do is let's look at a project and how it benefits the community as a whole. If we can, we might like a certain business, or maybe we don't like a certain owner quite as much. They're difficult to deal with, but how does something that we're looking at benefit our community? And, let's celebrate that. Let's recognize it. Let's look at what the positive outcome is going to be at the end of this thing. None of these projects are easy, and none of them are fast. They're always multi-year efforts. You might rotate staff, you might rotate investors, you might rotate a lot of people in it. But let's recognize what the goal is and keep working towards that. And as far as Southwest Virginia, I think we need to celebrate our successes and even celebrate our neighbors' successes. Galax and Carroll and Grayson are all too poor to fight. I mean, we've got to be a partner amongst ourselves. We continue to work together on a lot of regional projects, from broadband to the Crossroads facility with job training and small business development centers and things like that. So we just need to continue to do that. We need to celebrate successes. Something good happens in Carroll County doesn't mean that I've got to be jealous. We had a company that looked at Galax and Grayson a number of years ago, went to Grayson. That's great. People that work in Galax are still going to be employed there, or the living guys are going to be employed there. So their income is going to come back to our community. That's what we hope. So we're going to continue to work together and try to support each other. And let's just do the things again. How can we improve our neighbors' situation? How can we improve our citizens' situation? How can we just help our community overall?
And I think this panel is a great example of that. The piece I would give that for the community is avoid the 5U syndrome. And the 5U is when somebody comes up to Keith or to Kim and say, 5U, this is what I'd be doing. And we have people that come up with ideas all the time and some great ideas. But I always tell people that if you want to put a little bit of your time and effort into it, you move to the top of my stack, because we all are inundated with great ideas. We have our own great ideas. And it doesn't mean that mine's any greater than yours. If you're willing to put some skin in the game and help out, it could be just your time. That's plenty enough, but your effort really moves you from the 5U to let me help on that. I see Doug's joined us back in the conversation. Are we running out of time, Doug, or you have some questions for us, or I'm getting the hook and being pulled off the stage?
No, you're not. Your expertise, you're not getting pulled off the stage. We've got 4 minutes for a question or two, and I've got one question. Excellent. Yeah, and it builds off of Kim's comment that that with the pandemic, we realized the real attractiveness of communities that were a little bit off the path. So the questions about the pandemic and COVID and the country's response to it, how has it either changed these projects, or, if we're either is provided challenges, or in some ways, how's it helped them?
Well, Doug, are you talking to me, addressing?
Yeah, we'll start with you. We'll start with you, and then we'll go with Keith, and we'll hear from Ken too, because he's probably got a project there that's been affected. Okay.
Well, as far as COVID, thank God everybody's using Zoom, because we've been able to communicate. It's a good thing our communication didn't get hindered at all. And even like with the video production of the video everyone watched, and with our architect coming, we did, our distancing and everything flowed. Now, I am glad, I'm going to be honest, that we're not quite into the construction phase yet, because the prices are crazy. So I feel like, hey, maybe, it might have been a good thing for us. Maybe all of that'll tame down by the time we're ready.
Thanks. And Keith?
For us, I think the pandemic, it's probably helped our projects a little bit. Again, Zoom, people that couldn't be to meetings were just, nobody missed a meeting in the last year because of Zoom. It doesn't matter where you're at, you got to be a participant. Your phone works or something else. But it's given us an opportunity to really focus on those projects and see what we can do for this Project Light and God's Storehouse. It's actually allowed us to see what their capacity was. As somebody, our church volunteered there once a month to help serve meals. They had to reimagine completely what they were doing. And it only took a couple sit-down meetings with them. And we found out that, they had a lot more volunteers and a lot more capacity, and were willing to put a lot more skin in the game. And that's what's led us to kind of explore other partnerships with them, simply because they were willing to step up and do a lot more. So.
Fantastic. And Ken, how about your community?
And we look at that, and I've been very envious of Ohio. 6 months ago, the state of Ohio advertised, come to Ohio, you can live here, but work anywhere in the world. And there are communities in Kentucky that have really championed that and called themselves Zoom towns. And it's a great concept. The problem I think many of us have in Southwest Virginia, and I can speak specifically from my house that's right here in the town of Marion, is having broadband redundancy, affordability, and accessibility. And that's something that I know that the Commonwealth continues to struggle with. But we're going to have to get really quick on par with the rest of the nation for that to work where we need it to be. But in the meantime, people are realizing that we have a lot to offer here with outdoor recreation, with a balance of quality of life, and a little slower pace than some places. And you can come here to Southwest Virginia and be able to work anywhere. Just we need to improve the broadband so that it's a little more accessible for us.
Well, great. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, all of you, for your participation in this. The information, I think there's some inspiration there, the work that these projects are doing in many levels in the community, as far as advancing the community socially, economically, environmentally. We heard it all. And I bet you're going to hear some questions and be reached out to by some of the folks that are participating today. So thank you very much. We appreciate you.
Thank you guys very much. Kim, Keith, thank you so much for participating in this. Doug, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
All right, and then I'd like to now take just a moment to recognize our sponsors again. Our presenting sponsors are the University of Virginia's College at Wise, Go Virginia Region 1. Appalachian Power is a corporate sponsor. And the Business Journal of the Tri-Cities, Tennessee, Virginia is our media sponsor. They've all been critical in making the forum happen, and they're long-term partners in the community. All right, we're ready for a second giveaway. Again, we're having two giveaways today. This giveaway is focused on local eats and drinks. So give a shout out in the comments to your favorite brewery, winery, cidery, or restaurant in Virginia in the comments section on Facebook. Again, name your favorite winery, cidery, brewery, or restaurant in Virginia. Now, this giveaway is sponsored by beautiful Breaks Interstate Park, and they provided a gift certificate. And wait for this, it is for two for an elk tour. It really is an extraordinary experience. It's really memorable. To be entered to win the elk tour from Breaks Interstate Park, please type in the comments one of your favorite restaurants, breweries, cideries, wineries in Virginia. And if you haven't had a chance yet to visit Dickinson County and Buchanan County to see the elk, make sure you do. This really should be on everybody's bucket list. And let me see if there's some responses coming in. Sugar Hill out of the gate. Oh yeah, we love Sugar Hill. Sugar Hill. Okay, and I got to be specific now, right? I got to say either Sugar Hill Brewery in St. Paul or Sugar Hill Cidery in Norton, the city of Norton. Big Stone Gap General Store, best pizza ever. All right, you're making me hungry, and I've got a little bit of time before lunch here. Be careful. And I've certainly got time before I drink a beer. Abingdon Vineyards, Tumbling Creek Cidery, Sugar Hill Cidery again, Tumbling Creek, Ironheart Winery, Wood Booger Grill, Axe Handle Distilling. All right, they're coming in. Keep these coming in as we move along. You'll be entered to win, and you've made me hungry. Tune in though at the end of the session today. We're going to announce the winners. Thanks.
Mountain Empire Community College launched Virginia's first academic program in drone technologies, or unmanned aerial systems, in 2015. Embracing this emerging and innovative technology through a hands-on approach. Within the first year, this program literally took off, growing interest and enrollment in this new field. In its inaugural classes, the college found out that many of those enrolled in UMS courses were farm owners, interested in utilizing new technologies to monitor their crops and livestock. This interest opened up yet another window of opportunity to provide additional programming to meet the need of the region. As a result of the college's work with UMS Technology, as well as a grant from Go Virginia, the college developed Virginia's first ever smart farming certificate programs, combining the skill sets needed from the fields of environmental science, agricultural, and UMS technologies. A new generation of farmers are gaining skills in precision applications of fertilizer, water, pesticides, as well as data management of farm and field production. Through these programs, MECC has introduced students to the various uses of drone technology and provided hands-on training in photography, videography, mapping, volumetric measurements, multispectral plant studies, thermal infrastructure inspections, and finally, LiDAR point cloud studies. Since the programs were established, almost 200 students have participated in UMS smart farming courses, and an estimated 20 students have earned an industry-recognized credential. In addition, MECC has partnered with 12 regional farmers for hands-on instruction and data collection in both traditional and emerging crops such as hemp and barley. Go Virginia and MECC are moving Southwest Virginia to a new economy in agriculture and technology. For more information on MECC's Smart Farming Program, visit www.mecc.edu/smart-farming.
That is some high-tech agriculture. We've talked about strategic partnerships throughout the morning. Our next speakers will be sharing more about their strategic partnerships with local farmers, those who are using innovative technology to grow and harvest barley. And just what's that barley used for? Well, Dr. Kristen Westover, one of our speakers, has served as the president of Mountain Empire Community College in Big Stone Gap since July of 2017. Prior to that, she came from Patrick Henry Community College in Martinsville, where she served for 6 years as the Vice President for Academic and Student Development Services. She's also worked for the Charles A. Dana Center at the University of Texas, Austin, where she worked on national initiatives leadership team and joined an initiative with Carnegie Foundation for the advancement of teaching. Dr. Westover has worked on numerous curriculum and assessment projects at the college and state levels. And super cool, in 2016, she was selected as an inaugural Aspen Institute Presidential Fellow. Our next speaker, Will Payne, is the managing partner of Coalfield Strategies, a one-stop economic shop driving business investment to Southwest Virginia with a focus on energy, agriculture, and technology. He also serves as the director of the Southwest Virginia Energy Research and Development Authority. Will previously served in Governor Northam's administration, focusing on offshore wind industry and economic sustainability strategies in Virginia's coal fields. And he has co-founded Appalachian Grains as Southwest Virginia's first specialty grain broker, connecting local growers with craft breweries in Virginia. Dr. Westover, Will, thank you for being with us today. We're really looking forward to hearing about this partnership.
Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. I appreciate the opportunity, and we're excited to host this session from, as you see, from grain to growler. And we're going to talk about, as you mentioned, a lot of partnerships that have make this new specialty grain market opportunity possible. And so I think we can go right into the presentation if I can. First, I think we want to thank UVA WISE for hosting this two-day event. And we also want to thank the Business Journal for sponsoring the forum. And Scott Robertson in particular has a really good pulse on what's happening in the region. He understands what it's going to take to transform Southwest Virginia. This project is a good example of how the new economic development model of building something from the ground up. It's hard work. It requires a lot of partnerships. You hear no a lot, or you hear it's not going to work. Ultimately, it's going to provide growth opportunities for the long haul. And if you want to make something happen, just tell Dr. Westover that she won't be successful, and I guarantee you she'll prove you wrong. That's the winning attitude that creates success, and what we hope to talk about today. Apologize here. All right, first, we want to give you some context. The USDA's 2017 Ag Census data showed the following: that for barley, there was none grown in Lee County and none in Scott County. For wheat, there were 5 farms in Lee and none in Scott. In rye, there was 1 farm in Scott and none in Lee. But go back to the 1940 Ag Census data and you'll understand why we see incredible opportunity. For barley, there were over 1,000 acres and over 300 farms between Scott and Lee. For rye, there were over 200 acres in both counties. And for wheat, there were over 11,000 acres and nearly 1,800 farms. So you understand why, when we've been told by some folks you can't grow grain on a significant scale, history says otherwise. I think now we'll talk about some of the different efforts that are going into creating this specialty grain renaissance. And I'll turn that over to Dr. Westover.
Thanks, Will. And I'm excited to be here and excited to share this with everyone and share a little bit about Mountain Empire Community College's Smart Farming Program. In December of 2018, actually, MECC received a Go Virginia Region 1 grant, which combined MEC's existing FAA-approved unmanned systems program with components of our existing environmental science and water management programs to create MECC's Smart Farming program at our Center for Workforce and Innovation of Appalachia. Smart farming really involves the use of technology to improve farming techniques, increase yields, and maximize profits. And the program involves a 2-step process of data collection using drone technology and data analysis using MECC's new Agriculture Science Laboratory. MECC offers 2 career study certificates in Smart Farming 1 and 2, and both levels include courses contained within our Unmanned Aerial Systems Associate Degree program. And that's actually the only such program in the Virginia Community College system. Thanks, Will. As part of our Smart Farming program, the college established our first agriculture science lab in the region to provide space and resources to analyze data collected by our UMS program. And we believe the establishment of this program will create new jobs in the agriculture industry, increase production and profits for existing farmers in the region. The innovative program specifically addresses one of Go Virginia's Region 1 Council industry targets, and that is the food and beverage manufacturing. Additionally, the project brings revitalization to our town of Appalachia, repurposed a vacated educational facility, and we're now continuing to use that and providing certification in a rapidly growing sector. Unmanned systems is really the underlying technology in MECC's Smart Farming program. Using unmanned systems and drones, farmers gather and analyze field, water, and crop data, and they can then make better decisions and more timely decisions about moisture, disease, fertilizer, and pesticides, which then equates to better crop yields. So unmanned systems can be used throughout the crop cycle, from soil preparation to soil harvest. Before planting, we use cameras with thermal imaging to determine the moisture content of soil. Students learn to adjust with irrigation and terracing. They also perform herbicide and pesticide runoff detection. Then during the planting drones can be used to seed throw crops and some row crops. They're actually being utilized to plant trees, and the benefit to farmers here is really that there's no weight on their field during planting. This helps yields, and in fact, we have data that show crop yield is less in tractor treads, and the use of drones prevents repeated driving over crops with farm implements. So student farmers continue to monitor throughout the season. During the growth stage, they use multispectral cameras and infrared and other spectrums of light to evaluate crop growth and determine the plant health and density. And then farmers then address spots and problem areas rather than the entire field with water, pesticide, or herbicides. And our classes work with farmers 3 to 4 times in the growth cycle to identify problems. Unmanned systems are used to determine topography, altitudes, landscaping, construction pre-work. They're used quite a bit with apple and other fruit tree farmers. Other applications include almond tree, crop pollinating, determining limestone content in gravel piles. Many quarries use drones to measure the volume of their rock piles, and elevators use them to measure the volume of grain in bins and in piles. And the Virginia Barley Project was actually done this way. So Will, I'm going to turn it back over to you for Project Calypso. Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Westover. Project Calypso began with the Virginia Department of Mines, Minerals, and Energy. Will Clear, in particular, who leads the agency's economic development work, has been driving this train since 2018. And as you know, DMME is playing an increasingly significant role in refocusing how reclamation can drive new jobs and investment. This is also thanks to the work of Congressman Morgan Griffith, who secured AML pilot funds for projects that meet this jobs and investment test. The mandate from DMME Director John Warren to both Will and me when I was Chief Deputy of DMME about 3.5 years ago was go out and create projects. Don't sit back and wait for projects to come to us. That's the old way of doing business. After pretty exhaustive research with Virginia Tech small grains experts, including Dr. Wade Thomason and the Lee County Ag Extension Agent, Amy Byington, we made the business case for exploring growing multi-quality barley here in the region for the first time. That's geared toward the craft beverage industry. And this is one of those big idea projects. It has a number of moving pieces, but what's important is that we needed to prove the concept, and we could do that with private funds and using a new vehicle to coordinate these activities. And I continue to move on these slides a little too fast here. That's where Appalachian Grains comes in, which is now in the process of becoming a C3 to ensure the long-term success of this project. We want to use the region's long history of growing small grains, as I mentioned in those numbers from the 40s, to make Southwest Virginia the go-to supplier of specialty grains and malt for the craft beverage industry, not just locally, but statewide and beyond. And so by doing that, we'll accomplish a few things, and 6 things. First, put more money in the pockets of farmers. 2, give farmers a cash crop opportunity in the winter when they may not be already farming. Number 3, support next generation farmers who may identify with being part of a critical part of this craft beverage industry. Number 4, take someone who hasn't farmed but who wants to put in the hard work, show them a pathway to sustainability thanks to MECC's workforce programs. Number 5, respond to the industry need to reduce food miles and buy local. And number 6, as I said just a minute ago, establish Southwest Virginia as the provider of choice of specialty small grains and malt, and ensure quality via this Appalachian Grains brand. This project is a great example of why strategic partnerships are necessary, especially here in Southwest Virginia. And so here's everyone who's involved as of today. And I'll add that we need everyone in this group participating in order to be successful. The personalities in particular drive the project. And if we even lose just one of them, we lose momentum. And so, we think everyone and the extended family for their willingness to try something new and for being all in. And on the public level, kudos to the Lenawisco Planning District Commission, Lonesome Pine RIFA, the DMME, and of course, Mountain Empire Community College. A good example of how this is these partnerships are critical is the work of the ag extension agents. Thanks to Lee County's Amy Byington, who I introduced before, initially over the first year, and now Scott Jarrell and Scott County, as well as the farmers we have on the team. Year one was a success despite the record rainfall. All of our planning can be spot on, but one factor can prevent the grain from meeting the very strict quality standards that the industry demands. And we have to test this grain before we clean and then malt. And that's Mother Nature. This fact keeps, I think, all of us up at night. Last year we had a bit of a frost warning in June. Hard to believe, but luckily it didn't damage the crop. And so from now until late June and early July, when we harvest, we will be I think a little bit on edge. But this slide shows a great progression from our farmer in Lee County all the way to harvest that was in the first week of July, right around Independence Day. And another good example of people driving this project is the cleaning and malting. We needed a maltster. When Will Clear and I were trying to figure out the farming piece of this, we knew that's a great first step, but until we had a maltster in place, this project wasn't going to go anywhere. And so we decided to drive down to Asheville, North Carolina, and unannounced knocked on Riverbend Malt House's door. We met up with co-founder Brent Manning, who's the third picture from the left, and that jump-started this whole effort because we knew right then that we could move the process along, from the field to the breweries, but that critical middle step is important because that's the quality standard that the breweries and distilleries are buying into, and they have a respected name and a quality product. So let's look at the results of last year's pilot. We planted 24 acres. We harvested over 1,300 bushels. We malted over 17,000 pounds of barley, and we supplied 18 breweries locally and around the state. And we made sure, tapping some relationships, Northern Virginia, Hampton Roads, Richmond, Charlottesville, and very, very pleased with the willingness from those breweries to try something new. Many or most breweries are sourcing their malt from the Midwest, from Canada, from Europe, elsewhere. And so that's what we're competing with. We have to ensure quality, and that's, we'll touch on that in a little bit with Grain Terminal and Project Thoroughbred, but quality is important. We got one shot to get this right. We can't afford to sacrifice quality. And we're all focused on that. The first beer to be brewed with this landmark, malted barley was made by Three Notch Brewing Company that has presence all over Virginia, including locations in Charlottesville, Roanoke, Richmond, and Hampton Roads. They even let me help make the beer, which is really exciting, and adding in our malt and some of the hops. Many folks, when we've talked about this project, think we're growing hops here. And of course, we looked into hops initially with Virginia Tech for climate reasons and labor reasons. That just is not going to be a long-term, opportunity for Southwest Virginia. And so it was very exciting to be able to use this region's grain in this beer, which many of you watching today have had. And then, of course, we also have a second beer we wanted to highlight. We work with our friends at the Virginia Beer Company in Williamsburg, who very much focus on community and supporting local businesses as much as possible for their inputs. This, I voted today, IPA, American IPA, was exported to Japan back in December. And as you see it proudly displayed in this photo, which is taken in Midtown Tokyo around January. It's been a real hit. Virginia Beer Company's done a great job from day one, focused on some partnerships in Europe and in Asia to export this product. And we've heard some really good things about this beer in particular, which I guess brings me to Project Thoroughbred. Now while we focused on this growing concept, we work concurrently on addressing a need to ensure farmers have a market for their grain, a place to go. Project Thoroughbred will build a grain terminal to serve as the region's foothold in the industry. And while we don't have one today in the region that will be sufficient, that's going to change in about a year. And just you may ask, why is this necessary? Last year's crop, we had to drive it all the way or truck it to Louisville, Kentucky, and also to Indiana. In Virginia, the closest grain terminal to us would be in Southside and Danville, or all the way in the Northern Neck, which obviously doesn't make sense with our goal to reduce food miles. And so I want to thank especially the Lenawisco Plain District Commission and the Lonesome Pine RIFA for being the lead on building this terminal. And I want to thank DMME for its efforts to originate, fund, and ensure the success of the terminal. Dr. Westover and MECC play a critical operational and workforce development role. So I'll turn it over to her.
Thanks, Will. So you may not be able to tell from my accent, but I did not grow up in Virginia. I was born in Virginia, but and spent much of my adult life here. But I spent many of my adolescent and young adult years in Kansas. And in the summers, I worked at the Decatur Co-op grain elevator during wheat and milo harvest. Wheat is a hard red winter crop. So when Will and Will approached me about the concept of the grain elevator in our region, I understood just enough to be dangerous. I did understand the concept of food miles and recognized the impact that agriculture and farming has had in much of our service region. And we'd already begun the Smart Farming program at MECC, recognizing that in order for farmers and growers in our area to be profitable, they were going to need to shorten the distance to their point of sale. So we began to research grain operations, training opportunities, certifications, licensure requirements, professional organizations, and we discovered the Grain Elevator and Processing Society, which is an international professional association that supports its members and the industry by serving the knowledge resource for the world in grain handling and processing industry operations. It's a global network of industry professionals, includes about 2,800 individual members from over 1,150 companies. And we were excited to learn that the Grain Elevator and Processing Service was actually located at a university I knew very well, Kansas State University. So I reached out to some former colleagues. I used to work in the Kansas Board of Regents, had some colleagues there that knew about the center, and we discovered the $16 million Cruise Feed Technology Innovation Center at Kansas State. It's a relatively new state-of-the-art facility that houses their Grain Elevator and Processing Society, where feed millers and grain operator professionals from around the world are trained. And we have 2 faculty members who are interested and qualified to take the lead in becoming Grain Elevator and Processing faculty instructors. They've signed up for initial training this summer at Kansas State University, and MECC will then have 2 qualified and credentials and instructors for MECC's Grain Operations Management Program, which will offer this recognized credential in grain operations management from the Grain Elevator and Processing Society. So this credentialing will provide students with the skills and knowledge about grain quality, facilities maintenance and design and operation, and general industry operations. And we're excited about the operations, and we're excited about the new program.
Thank you, Dr. Westover. And it's been an incredible 2.5 years since that first meeting, and where we are today. I'm excited about where we're going to be in a year when the grain terminal is operational. And do again want to thank all of our partners, especially our new one in Go Virginia Region 1, for supporting the second year of this GROW demonstration, along with the establishment of a land bank opportunity as we focus on a plan for young next generation farmers to get into this business and show them a pathway and help provide resources to make it a sustainable and full-time career at hopefully more than double the region's average wage or salary. And the third part of that project will also, thanks to Virginia Tech and the Ag Extension agents, continue variety trials to plan for the future. And with that, that concludes our presentation.
Well, terrific. Thank you for the presentation. It's fascinating. And I want to go in a couple of different directions. One, you just mentioned kind of the attraction of young talent to the industry. And so this question looked at Dr. Westover. How are you seeing students respond?
So I think a lot of students see farming and agriculture as, what they saw when their grandparents were involved, and the introduction of technology, as particularly drones and unmanned systems, has really, I think, sparked interest among students that sometimes you wouldn't think would be interested, perhaps maybe in a field in agriculture. A lot of our students who are interested in unmanned systems in general really took off in terms of seeing this as a profitable future for them, and something that they could handle and do.
Terrific. Another question that came in, and you touched on it a couple of times, but let's talk about food miles and the importance of reducing those.
Will, you're the expert here.
Well, no. So we made sure, as we were kicking off this GROW project, when we did that, we did it without a lot of much input from breweries. And so, after we planted the seed, we realized we should probably check in with the breweries, and we did so, and it helped kind of confirm what we were thinking. And there are a number of reasons why breweries will want to pursue purchasing their grain from us. That we can, we think we can exceed the quality, and we have exceeded the quality that they're getting elsewhere. That we've got a story to tell, and those breweries want to tell that story with this grain. But number three, as you say, the reducing food miles, and you have grain coming from the Midwest, from Canada, far Western Canada, and Europe, and there will always be a need for some of that grain. But as breweries in Virginia today import, I'll use acres here in this case, make it easier, but 5,000 acres worth of barley. And our goal here, moving from the initial pilot to over the next few years, pretty accelerated pace, getting to about 1,000 acres grown. And that's why this land bank is going to identify up to 3,000 acres of farmable land. And it is an argument for, it's not just about reducing the miles traveled, the emissions from the trucks and from flights, but we look at probably about a third of the carbon generated with these products is coming from the actual travel time. So we can do something that no one else is going to do in Virginia. I mean, this is an opportunity for this region not to take a cue from our friends in Richmond or elsewhere, but really we can lead on this, and we're going to do that with that argument.
Thank you. looking at the slide with all the partners and thinking about all the different components of this, whether it's from the energy perspective or the workforce perspective, the agriculture, the entrepreneurship, business startup perspective. We were challenged yesterday to think in systems, and you are thinking in an incredibly complex system. What's your advice on that, or what are some ways you brought this together and pulled together those partners?
Well, I'll start. This is incredibly difficult. I'll just say that this is what started as a side project, and is now developed into. We have a whole. I wish I could show you the diagram, but we have the whole value chain written out and ways where this can expand well beyond just specialty grains. This is not just about the specialty grains for the craft beverage industry. We're talking about co-cropping soybeans. We're trying to. We have a tentative plan here to show to farmers working with MECC on a path to sustainability there and a very high farming income that involves livestock and grains. And so with these partners, without the public sector, we wouldn't be here today. Without the ability to have this grain terminal, without MECC, without Lennawisco, others, Go Virginia. But we want to make sure on the private side that we had our private partners and to prove a concept using private dollars first instead of going straight to government asking for money. And so now with this Go Virginia support, we can continue on the demonstration path and together on the public and private side, grow this project. But it's absolutely critical. I think where Southwest Virginia in particular has to, if it's going to thrive, not be left behind. You can't go the government route to solve your problems. You've got to have equal partnerships, and that's why even folks like Appalachian Power, Dominion Energy, others who are supporting this work, Scott County Telephone, Point Broadband, they're all in. They see the value in these big idea projects. They're very hard to pull off, but how rewarding is this in a few years when we show a pathway for young farmers and for this region to reclaim its place in agriculture, going back to the data we showed from the 40s.
Very exciting. Dr. Westover, what's your response to that?
I would completely echo what Will said. I think that, the collaboration is so key, and recognizing that, if we don't have the expertise, the skill set, the knowledge that we need, being able to go out and find it. But I think the thing that makes this project so exciting is that it doesn't have one person kind of driving the collaboration. Now, I'll tell you, Will has been wonderful, but everyone involved wants to see it be successful, and I think really sees the value, has some investment in it, and moves toward trying to get that done. It's not a one-person driven initiative. It really is that entire collaboration slide of folks that you saw. Awesome.
Well, we've got somebody in the audience who is doing some systems thinking as well, and they're thinking about another component in the system. And the question is, have you worked with local 4-H centers or programming to assist and educate the youth on this type of venture? Might be a way to encourage the youth of our communities in a mentoring farm program.
Let me start on that, and that's why the value of having our ag extension agents kind of they're all in, and so that's our connection. We can't just talk to students who are seniors in high school about getting in this industry. We've got to start very young, and so we are thankful for the leadership that those agents can provide in talking to our 4-H members and other students in kind of the middle school level and early in high school as well. So that's absolutely a priority, and that's that shows the pipeline to MECC for all its different programs from growing in logistics and unmanned systems all the way to managing this whole grain opportunity.
Well, thank you both very much. This has been super informative and I think inspirational and exciting. I know there's gonna be a lot of conversation about it, and we're gonna be watching the results of that pilot and thinking about those next crops and markets.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Doug.
Really appreciate it. Wow. So we've got one more session and then, of course, some big news. We've got prizes that we've got to announce. But our last presentation is going to be a joint discussion between myself and Ben Muldrow. Ben's going to use our forum conversations as a launching pad to highlight how communities across the country have sparked entrepreneurship momentum, how they're building it, making it happen. And we're going to continue to talk about our region and how we're going to continue to work together to keep entrepreneurial momentum alive in our region. Now, for Ben Muldrow, let's talk about Ben. He's a familiar face. You remember him from last year with the virtual economic forum. And you also remember him from the stage at the 3rd annual economic forum. He's really a strategic partner in the region, and we're really happy he's going to be with us today. He's a place branding and economic development expert, and he spent the last 18 years assisting communities as they develop identities that both attract investment and talent, and he's worked with communities as they undertake community development, triple bottom line projects to lead to economic vitality, environmental stewardship, and social advancement. So I said he's been in the region for a long time, and you've probably seen him around. He's a partner in Arnett Muldrow and Associates and a founding contributor at Proud Places. He has designed creative branding and marketing programs, and get this, 600 communities across 40 states and 5 countries. Now, it would be hard for some of us to even think of, make a list of 600 communities. But Ben can not only make a list of it, he can tell you what that community's tagline is and their value proposition. And if you walk down the street of the community today and someone came up to him, he would be able to call them by name. I've seen him do it. He really built strong relationships, and we've really benefited in Southwest Virginia from those relationships. He worked in 2015 and worked on led the effort to create the Southwest Virginia branding package, which we looked at yesterday. And he also worked on the Clinch River Valley Initiative brand prior to that, and brands for many communities. So Ben, thanks for being with me. And we'll just have to take you off of mute.
Am I unmuted yet?
You are, you're there.
Okay, great. Hey Doug, how's it going? Thank you for that kind introduction.
I meant every word of it. I've worked with you for years and have enjoyed it and grown professionally through the interactions. So
no doubt, man. What an exciting 2 days. I'm joining you guys from Crowley, Louisiana. In fact, we just wrapped up a really, really interesting conversation with the Lieutenant Governor. So if you hear a couple of voices in the background, it is people that are kind of making their way back into the training. So hopefully that will quiet down in just a moment. But I am so thrilled to have been able to catch up on some of the amazing conversations with the forum yesterday. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see our good friend Nancy Whitworth this morning talk a little bit about some of the things that she learned with all her work there in Southwest Virginia. I did get a great opportunity to catch the tail end of Ken Heath. Nothing like hearing a little bit of what Ken's got to say in that group, and then of course was able to hear some of the amazing things going on with Appalachian Grains. And in fact, I don't know, did you get a package?
I did. I showed part of my package earlier. Yeah, I didn't show the whole thing. I only showed part of it.
I showed up at my Airbnb here in Louisiana, and there was a box waiting for me. And in the box, I don't know if it's appropriate. It's 11 o'clock, but it feels like it would be only right to support the businesses of the region.
Oh yeah, at some point in this episode, I think you're doing it. You're doing it. All right.
I feel like it would be rude to not show the support of this is amazing. Like, to literally be drinking a Southwest Virginia beer, in the heart of Cajun country.
Well, I think it's terrific. And if you want to, there's a telltale sign when you open it. If you want to hold off, we can. I'm going to build some anticipation.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and just delay your gratification. You've got to earn that first.
Okay, fair enough. Because believe it or not, it is 10:10 here in Central Time, so it's okay if I have to wait a little longer.
Well, that gives everybody a little bit of a heads up of what to look forward to. You know, in addition to giving away prizes, there might be a happening. Yeah. Well, yeah. Thank you, Ben, for being with us, and let's dive into it. I know that you listened to bits and pieces of it, and our theme in this 2-day event is connection.
Sorry.
Well, that's all right. Yeah. So our theme today is connection, and I wanted to see if you heard the parts that you were able to drop in on. Did you hear any kind of thoughts or see how the region is connecting toward economic growth?
I'm on a call. I can't speak. I'm sorry. I'm on a call. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So sorry. The theme of connection, the things that we're seeing there are absolutely, I don't know of another region that has the connections that Southwest Virginia has. I don't know of another place that is working so thoroughly to create these true economic ecosystems. I loved what Tom had to talk about yesterday with the economic ecosystems and this kind of building that overall, that connected infrastructure. And I love the mind map that he had, that graphic of talking about the 4 different sectors of building that ecosystem. That was not really a way that I don't think I had ever really thought about it quite that way.
And I think some folks responded to that mind map yesterday, and not only looking at it in the generalities so that we can understand the framework that we're working in, but then when you put the specifics of all of the resources that we have, whether it's from the private sector or the public sector. You missed Nancy today, but she did mention the difference between, in her mind, hardware and software, and thinking of the hardware being buildings that help to revitalize Greenville, but then the software, what happens inside those buildings? Who's at work behind the scenes? Who are the civic organizations making things happen? What are the entrepreneurs that are going to go into the buildings? I really feel like that's, as much as we try to map it, there's a lot more out there that we're not even considering always.
So was it Tom, remind me on that, was it Tom that was talking about the lack of effort that we put in to identify young entrepreneurs and those personalities that really stick out? And, that as he was talking about that, I think that was one of my big takeaways from yesterday. This idea that for true entrepreneurship, that's a spark. It's a spark that you see early, and it's kind of an interesting dynamic because we don't necessarily cultivate it the same way we do athletic ability. And I thought that was a really interesting point. Like I have, Doug, you know me, I've got 5 kids, and my youngest is 7, and she has decided that she wants to own a spa. Now, when you have kids, they kind of go through and, it's kind of like they want to be a surgeon today, then they want to be an aeronautical engineer, then they want to be a spa owner. She's pretty hard and fast. Like every time she's wanted to own a spa for like 2 years. And then she's, designed logos and gives gift certificates and all that kind of stuff. And like, as he was sitting there talking about it, I was thinking to myself, that's that spark. That's that interest that you can identify even at that young age. And we don't really create an environment that says, hey, young person, you can be that next risk taker. You can be that next business owner. I loved that conversation.
I did as well. And then tying it to the panel later on, Blake Salyer, who you would go ahead and call him a serial entrepreneur now.
Yeah.
Blake Salyer mentioned watching his parents run businesses.
Right. Right.
So, and we know that young people or young entrepreneurs are more likely to be entrepreneurs if they have entrepreneurs in the family.
Absolutely.
Not everybody has entrepreneurs in the family. So how do we, as a region, as a community, organize to help ignite that spark in young people?
Absolutely. And before I answer that, because that's a great question, but I think that it's fair to say something that's really specific to Southwest Virginia. When we talk about regions, there are some regions that are defined by others, and there's some regions that are defined by their own. And I think one of the biggest powers of Southwest Virginia is it is a region defined by its own. And when you start with that foundation, you are able to go through and the connection already exists. I think that, you think about some of these other regions in Virginia, and there's not necessarily pre-existing connection. There's not, they might even say, why in the world is this county and that county in the same area? But in Southwest Virginia, it's a shared heritage. It is a topography that shaped a lifestyle. It is a industrial history, an agricultural history, an economic history, and an economic evolution that creates stitches and threads between you all, that creates the perfect environment to cultivate a network. And I think one of the things that you all have done as well as anybody else is breaking down the stereotype of the entrepreneur and making people realize that Southwest Virginia is a place where you can take a risk. It's a place that you can take a chance because it's a place worth being. And I think that with your efforts with, opportunity and all the different programs that you all have done, I feel like it would be hard, a business would be hard pressed to say there's nobody in Southwest Virginia that wants to help me.
Yeah, I think you're right. But communicating that is key. There's such collaboration, opportunity, support in the region, but we do have to communicate it. And yesterday we had the discussion with Elisa, looking at the brand language.
Right.
Yeah, which was
that. I don't know if that was scary to you, but that was really scary to me because she was extremely intelligent and she was then publicly critiquing the work in front of everybody. And I was like, oh, I might get sick for tomorrow morning's presentation and not be, but I thought everything she said it was so amazing. It was spot on. It was this really, really interesting analysis of making sure our words connect with the people we want to communicate to. And isn't that one of the greatest things that I feel like has happened during the pandemic is we've had to explore different ways to communicate. We've had to interact and communicate and gather in ways that we're not used to. And I do think that it has started to really hammer home this idea that communication is no longer a shotgun. You can't just shotgun your communication. You have to have a laser sight, and you have to have the right message and get it to the right audience. You can't just throw it out to everybody. But right before we hopped on, I took a quick look. 160,000 posts on Instagram using the hashtag SWVA. And when you look through those images, they appear to be one of the most stunning places that this planet has to offer. And that to me is winning. You know, like when I go back and I look at that kind of stuff, that you know, it takes back to those weeks and weeks that you and I spent on the road, traveling the region, meeting the people, learning about the place, and seeing people being so willing to share, so willing to connect these beautiful experiences and these beautiful interactions with this place that they call home. That feels to me like winning.
Yeah, I agree. And it wasn't just us. There was a van full of people and different people in different parts over that long course of conversations and listening. Oh, we heard about listening yesterday. And honestly, my head went to Ben Muldrow, one-on-one conversations, small group conversations, community conversations, you listening. And then in that brand statement, I didn't hold my breath a bit, really, because I know what went into it, and I know the feeling being in a room when it was read the first time. And I was like, yeah, this really hit it. It's authentic. It does share the values.
Where were we? Do you remember? What city were we in? I remember.
Oh, well, I remember a number of them.
The first time we read it was at the mill there in Damascus.
Yep.
First time we ever read it out loud. Yep.
Yeah, and you'd spent a long night that night before, I think.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, I think that and you know, that whole idea of listening and communication, and honestly, I will say this. One of the other things that I think that Southwest Virginia has always been really, really good about, but I think that it's another kind of byproduct of the pandemic, is the return of a little bit of grace. You know, I mean, literally, we're doing a closing session of a 2-day economic development forum, and an 85-year-old woman walked into the room to use the bathroom. You know, I mean, hey, what are you going to do, really? Like, it's just one of those things where it's just kind of like everybody's like, yep, that's kind of the world we live in now.
Yeah, well, and again, I just use that word authenticity. I don't want to beat it to death, but there's something real about that. And our communities are real. And it is just as important that we show how good and wonderful our communities are as it is that we also show, hey, here are the challenges we're working on, and here's how we're organized as a community to address them. And that last panel session was a terrific example of, okay, look at all of these multiple challenges, many different bottom lines, and look at how we're organizing to address it. That's a place I want to move to and invest in.
Absolutely. And, you know, I loved hearing that last conversation where, you know, Doug, I know you've got some Delaware roots, and I live right up the road from your mom. And, you know, we talked a little bit about, in 2017, we opened up a facility called Proximity Malt. And Proximity Malt was started by a guy named Dale West out of Milwaukee. He was a long time malter. He talked about how the idea of malt houses, there used to be these regional malt houses all over the country, malting and providing these essential ingredients in beer making. And then over the course of the 1900s, you know, it consolidated down to 4 companies, 4 people providing all the malts to the beer industry. And they're trying to disrupt that. They're trying to reconnect agriculture and producers. And so they are creating this network of regional malt houses. And Laurel, Delaware was the first one they opened, which is kind of an amazing, like when you sit there and you think about all the different places in the country, you know, you think about remoteness. I mean, where the topography of Southwest Virginia oftentimes creates a certain amount of isolation. It is the combination of a, you know, convoluted 3-state jurisdiction on a peninsula, you know, surrounded on all sides by water, that creates a similar isolation in the peninsula. And so I think that it's always amazing for me to see those private sector solutions that are going out there, meeting the needs, going back to economies of old, going back to a smaller supply chain. And, you know, I think that we heard the phrase food miles, you know, and this idea of shrinking that food supply chain is so very important. So yeah, I have been thrilled with what I've heard over the past couple of days.
Yeah, and the malt example reminded me of canneries. There used to be canneries all over the country, you know, many in short distances that provided that access to market and processing.
In fact, let me tell you a story. It's funny. So I told you I'm here in Crowley, Louisiana. We are in the Grand Southern Opera House. We're right across the street from the Crowley City Hall. City Hall has moved into what was an old Ford factory. And this was back in the day where Ford would pre-assemble but not completely assemble their vehicles. So they shipped partially manufactured cars to regional assembly locations. And the City Hall has moved into this Ford assembly plant. They still have the original Model T elevator. And it straight up is a Model T size elevator that would carry that completed car from the third floor back down to the first floor. Absolutely amazing. And I love seeing, and you know, we talk a lot about trends. You know, the biggest thing that I am excited about is what I call manufacturing on Main Street. It is the rebirth of small scale manufacturing in our downtown districts, the realization that the combination of small and light manufacturing combined with retail front sides has created a revenue stream that is allowing small, local, invested businesses to thrive. I'm so excited about that.
Yeah, through the Main Street program, they did a small scale manufacturing kind of pilot program working with a few communities. When you think about, you know, that movement in conjunction with, say, opportunity zones that are driving investment to communities, and many of our downtowns are in opportunity zones, there's tremendous opportunity.
Absolutely.
You know, I don't want to shortchange anybody, and Ben has so many examples from around the country, and I know you've got some slides. Do you want to share some examples of some things that other?
Yeah. I'd love to just share a couple of things that we've been working on over the past year. That, you know, when you're trapped in your house and you're not allowed to leave, I guess that you never really know exactly what kind of projects you're going to work on. But these are things that I think are really born out of evolution and born out of this interesting mindset of, you know what, it is amazing when literally everything's on the table. It's kind of like, hey, anything can go. So with this first project that I want to share, this is from a community of 278 people. It is Little Creek, Delaware, and it is a traditional fishing village. They are fighting with long-term climate change. They're fighting with sea level rise. They're trying to figure out ways that they can make sure that their community can survive for another 150 years. And after going through a student-driven downtown master planning process, one of the ideas that was introduced was micro retail. And I think one of the conversations, Doug, I know you and I have talked about this for quite a few years, and it was a concept that was really born out of some of our work on the Mississippi Gulf Coast after Hurricane Katrina. And this idea that people needed small modular places that were low cost, that they could get their start, and that there weren't always incubator spaces. This idea of right sizing retail. Sometimes you only need 300 square feet. And that is the right size for you. So this community decided that they were going to try to build a micro retail village. And they were going to, because of some waterproofing standards, they were able to build these structures in a FEMA floodplain without having to elevate them. The combination of them being considered modular and waterproofed allowed them to be able to put them in place. So can you see the screen?
Sure can.
Okay, so I got to give major props to the team that worked on this. This is the University of Delaware Coastal Resilience Design Studio, and it's led by Dr. Jules Bruck. Absolutely fantastic team of students that dug into this. I might or might not be married to one of the designers, so I know a little bit about the project. So with this, they went in and they wanted to create this thing that they called Waterman's Village. And it was this great opportunity to play off the character of the community to create this micro retail village. And they had a pre-existing building, which was the building number 1. It was being used now as a deli. And then they created this whole collection of micro retail units, everything from an ice cream shop to a farmer's market stand to a bait and tackle shop. And the property owner had a lot of these vendors lined up. They were ready to go. So they designed these small spaces, but they paid a lot of focus to not just the site, the way that the site would work. One of the things the team landed on that I thought was brilliant was like, okay, we're going to have a bait shop. We're a Waterman's Village. We can't just accommodate cars. We need to accommodate big vehicles carrying boat trailers. Like, how are we going to handle all of those things? So they designed this really great rear entry system and parking capacity that would hold these boat towing, vehicles. So, really a tremendous amount of thought, not just to the design, but the overall use of this village. But I think, with some of these 3D models, you start to see it just feels like a truly charming place. They went through and they focused on resilient design. They looked at everything from the materials, pervious pavers, reuse of things like railroad ties to use those sleepers as pathways, using a lot of the textures and materials that would be thought of in kind of a nautical coastal village, and even pavement, options, kind of your crushed oyster shell instead of doing concrete, so that it's still allowing for all of that water filtration and you're not dealing with the same kind of stormwater runoff. They created a full native plant palette that would allow for the entire site to be planted with native plants, but not just native plants. I think a lot of times we've seen people have gone a bit overboard with, if it's not native, it's not good. These are native thirsty plants. Mm-hmm. They're plants that absorb tremendous amounts of water so that they can help aid in that very saturated soil of this coastal community. But then they also did a great job looking at architectural vernacular, things like roof pitch. They looked at, appropriate color palettes based off the colors of the buildings. They looked at the materials that the building should be made out of to keep that architectural consistency. Things like the design on windows and doors, and how you do signage, what that looks like. So really, they covered all the different facets of the project and created this really illustrative example of how it would look and feel. And I think people got really, really excited about the character. And then they even took a look at how you might brand some of those businesses that would come in. So everything from the Horseshoe Market to the Big Scoop ice cream shop to the Lucky's Big Catch.
Mm-hmm. That's terrific. One thing that comes to mind is worrying about sea level rise and designing to address that. Constraints are really important to designers. Any region has constraints. Any property, any site has constraints. And there are ways you can see some plans that just kind of ignore them in a way, or try to do a traditional design in an environment that needs a very specific response. But we so shortchange ourselves by that. As we do the listening and find out what the challenges are, as we take the site for what it is and understand it, we can create something really beautiful and powerful that does a whole lot more than just creates a retail space. This does a lot.
Absolutely. And in Southwest Virginia, I mean, you have such an interesting lay of the land there. It's almost like nature says to you, you want to do what, where, it's this interesting dynamic of, the trying to figure out you know, I've often talked about Southwest Virginia and those original settlers, you know, some of them probably went there because they liked a certain amount of isolation. You know, they weren't going there to be ultra connected. They were going there to be independent, like the holler mentality, you know, where it's kind of like, this is my place. This is, I feel nestled. I feel encompassed here. And then, you know, when you have these communities that are formed as essential services to people, it's almost like a town of introverts, you know. It's like, oh well, no, we don't need outside dining because we're going to take everything to go. And you know, listening to the constraints, but then also listening to the character, listening to the place, and honoring the place. And that's where your projects really start to sing, I think. And that's actually a perfect segue to this amazing project that we worked on in Lake City, Colorado. We had this old gas station, and it had closed down. And this is another small community. I think that Lake City probably is just at 1,000 residents or less. But they had this amazing music heritage. They had people, there was something about them. They were surrounded by, I think, 11 different 14,000 foot peaks. They were considered the most remote city in the lower 48 because of how far they are from the next town. But they had this amazing music heritage. So we wanted to tackle an adaptive reuse project of this gas station. And that's when we came up with this idea of refuel. And we played off of this idea of music. Hey, does that sound familiar? You know, the Crooked Road laid the foundation for using your music heritage to drive economic development. So we went through and we kind of analyzed the site. We took a look at how to package it. We thought that this idea of refuel made sense for the reuse of a gas station. We went through and we actually created an entire promotion piece that looked like a CD cover or an album cover. And we created some local music, put it on a vinyl, and created actual album covers. So it was kind of a cool delivery there. Talked about the different components of the project in a track list. We had everything from reverb, which was the backyard. We actually had an entire music venue that was intended to have people, you know, be able to drive in and listen from their cars or Jeeps. You know, we had a built-in recording studio called Remix, an integrated Airbnb called Recharge, a performance garage called Retool, and then of course the main restaurant facility called Refuel. So, you know, setting that tone, setting the stage, telling those stories, I think this was something that was pretty exciting. And you know, it was not, they were big ideas that weren't very expensive and they weren't crazy. You know, the community felt like it made sense and they were excited about using it in this way. So that was something that was kind of cool that we did as well.
Yeah. And just what we talked about before with, you know, cultural heritage, the Crooked Road around the mountain, you know, for years, the idea of, how are we reinforcing what's special about this place? Yes, it's isolated, but that also helps create a stronger regional culture by being isolated, I think.
Absolutely.
And the cool thing about all of this stuff too is somebody look at that and go, well, wait a minute, we're marketing music. Well, yeah, we should all be marketing what's special about our place. We'll all have music, we'll all have outdoors, but ours is unique to us, and we help tell that story. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, I got one other thing I want to share with you, and I think this one's a little interesting because it's not a groundbreaking idea at all, but we were working with a project team that was trying to create a solution for a community that was experiencing food scarcity. And, you know, after looking at supply chain and just realizing food access, they were literally a 14-minute drive from the closest food access point. And, you know, for a community in Delaware where literally you can drive all the way across the state in 12 and a half minutes, to be 14 minutes from food that's isolation in our state. So what we did is we actually decided to create a mobile modular market. We designed an idea of this food access farmers market, but we specifically designed it to never be singularly site specific. So we had a launch site, we called it the Tidal Market at Johnny Cake Landing, and this is in Frederica, Delaware. We kind of launched the idea, launched how, you know, with this Tidal Market, they could have a harvest market called Autumn Tide, a holiday market called Yule Tide. You know, people love seeing the expandability of the ideas. We kind of showed, you know, told a little bit of the story. We're turning the tide on food scarcity. And then also this idea of, you know, what they say about a rising tide, you know, so both the economic development and food scarcity component of this modular market. And then the design team went in and really dug into some of those design elements because they understood that if this is going to be a modular market, the experience points, the components that they get out of the experience really need to be tied to the programming itself, not to the site. So they designed branded barricades. They went through and designed signage for day of so that they could kind of highlight, you know, give peas a chance. They had some fun with some of the messaging. They went through and created these signs that would be put at regional locations with chalkboards integrated into them, where they could go and write what products or produce was fresh that week. So they actually had a giant sports facility 1 mile from their downtown that has thousands of visitors every week. And they started to drop this sign at that sports facility. They also focused in on this whole idea of the Johnny Cake. The Johnny Cake was kind of like a corn pancake of sorts that was used oftentimes in, you know, the folks that were taking food to go, shall we say. And it was the original to-go food. And so we actually branded the idea of the Frederica Johnny Cake, and they're going to get a Johnny Cake vendor at the market who's selling Johnny Cakes at every single market. So found a great old recipe of Frederica Johnny Cakes. Then from there, just showing that branded merchandise. But then the design team went in and they did a really, really great job thinking about things like they created backs for their farmers market tents, so that they would create a wall against the roadway. They would market the event and they would be able to slow traffic and make people feel a little bit more protected. I love that idea. They kind of looked at using this as a catalyst to drive rebirth and reinvestment in all of this landing site, the silos, the granary, warehouse, which are all buildings as part of that. And then they created a whole series of different site plans for the inaugural site. The inaugural site was a vacant restaurant. And they created everything from, this is what a farmer's market layout looks like. This is what a nighttime movie looks like. So they did a really good job at creating those different layouts. And then they helped to create these visualizations for the community, showing a little bit of what the site would look like. They introduced the idea of two different components. One is called a market trailer and the other is the anchor vendor site. These are both modular components that serve as storage when the event's not going on, as an activation anchor space when it is. So this might be a big farm vendor, it might be a food vendor, or coffee shop. They also made sure to integrate open seating. This is an example of the vacant building, and they showed how they could kind of set this up and use different structures and how the different impacts kind of help to create this sense of place. And then they did some 3D modeling just to help really put people in the picture. So again, this is not the kind of stuff that is groundbreaking, but it's these really nice evolutions of ideas that we're familiar with that help it make it relatable to all. I mean, you know, Doug, how many times have we worked in a community where it's like they do a farmer's market, the farmer's market starts to grow some legs, and then next thing they want to do is spend $400,000 on a farmer's market shelter. And then it's like you built the shelter and maybe it doesn't serve a whole lot of purposes for the other 6.5 days a week that it's there. And, you know, so I loved this idea of treating it more as a modular retail stimulus than as a fixture in the community.
Well, it's great, you know, placemaking tools, and you know, and we do have some of those farmer market pavilions that do get programmed, and it's kind of super exciting to see other events happening with them, and to see entrepreneurs or community groups say, wait a minute, can we do something there? Can we contribute to the community by showing a movie under it one night? You know, that kind of thing, which is terrific. And these projects, you know, I learned something during the presentations, especially, you know, looking back at Keith Barker's presentation on the Vaughn Furniture Building and the strategy behind that. When you're pointing to, you know, both the sea level rise on the one project here, where you're looking at food access and solving very important community issues or addressing them, and at the same time bringing in the partners that care about that issue and contribute to the project. Right. That's where it seems like it really wakes up and things get legs. I want to talk a little bit. We had that panel yesterday with the entrepreneurs, and I want to talk about that, creating these larger visions like you just showed us, and then the power that has, how it can be leveraged for additional private investment and entrepreneurship sparking. And before I do, I want to also say to folks, if you have any questions for Ben, he's on the hot seat. You can put it in the comments and he'll have to answer them.
Absolutely. So, Doug, you know, I think it's funny spending as much time in communities and kind of seeing what works and what doesn't work, and hearing these stories. There are these things that kind of rise to the top. And, you know, whenever I think about entrepreneurs, and just business ecosystems, I always think that there's a really important relationship with access to capital. And being able to make sure that relationship with access to capital is a good one. And I think a lot of times we really treat all of this as, it's almost like this whole access to capital is, oh, we're only talking about startups, or we're only talking about entrepreneurs, or then we're only talking about retail, and then we're only talking about upper floor housing. And all of those things are interconnected in the financial infrastructure. And I heard something yesterday that blew my mind. A community was telling us about how they had a banker of their big local bank who was on their design team. And they were having a conversation about how frustrated they were at the lack of code enforcement. And the banker went to the city and said, you know what, if you do not continue, if you don't start to do a better job enforcing code, we are no longer going to issue loans, because we cannot assure that our investments will be sound in this community. Wow. Can you imagine the conversation that would happen in a community if your financial infrastructure now said it is essential for the viability, for the economics of this place? It is essential that you take care of yourself. It is essential that you keep your house in order. It is essential that this is a place that looks like people love it, because economically that is good for everybody. And, you know, when you start to connect this idea, like, why is it that a bank sees risk in an energetic, dynamic, you know, young person with a great idea, but they don't see risk in an 18-year-old mortgage on a building that's falling apart?
Mm-hmm.
So, I know that's not exactly the answer that you were kind of going for, because, there's so much with that connectivity and that kind of the networking that goes on and the energy that happens amongst one another. I don't know if you noticed yesterday, but a lot of people commented on the big question mark of what is the actual transition of hybrid working going to look like. Are we going to see a big number of people that are now able to work? And I think that it was who was it that was before Tom, that was from VDP?
Stephen Moray.
Stephen, yeah, I think it was Stephen, and Stephen was really talking about, he thinks that we might see people, go a little farther, but it's going to be a little bit more of a rubber band. It's not going to be like, you're not just going to open up the doors and people can locate wherever they want to in the country. But this idea of living an hour and a half away and going into the office once every 2 weeks might actually be a lot more viable. And I think what we're going to see is, I think we are going to see a new push of retail establishments tied in with dynamic co-working spaces. So I think we're going to see breweries that are going to host co-working spaces, or coffee shops that are integrating co-working into their model. Maybe first floor retail, second floor co-working, and when you have a membership, you have a subscription to get a coffee every day. Like, I think that one of the stats that has blown my mind is 89% of people who participate in a co-working space say they're happier.
Right, that's powerful.
89%.
And we had the panel yesterday, of coffee houses and restaurants that do provide that kind of space. And we've seen it, for years, since kind of the Ace Hotel model in New York City, where they've like, wait a minute, all these people we just have a space here with businesses around it. All these people are doing business at the table.
Right. We're giving co-working away for free.
Yeah. I think it is exciting, and it's a real room for opportunity. And I do want to touch back on your comment about the capital. I do think responsible capital makes a real difference. And you think about where loans are made and what's risky and what's not. I think one of the, I do believe a community vision, a regional plan, a community plan. They know where they're going. Here's what we're investing in it. Here, that has got to reduce risk on some of these projects and make it more possible for our entrepreneurs to get access to capital.
Absolutely. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So you have been this big supporter of Southwest Virginia for years. And, when we first started working in the region, when we were first there on kind of the early days of the Crooked Road, then we saw launch of Around the Mountain, and we saw the development of the Artisan Center and Appalachian Gateway, Appalachia, all those different things that were happening all at the kind of sequential time period. Then we launched that brand, and we've seen the community and the region kind of telling this story. The phrase, stepchild, the realization that Southwest Virginia was closer to like 5 other state capitals than they were to Richmond. The idea that the region was ignored, the region was overseen, the region was invisible to the state of Virginia. I'm not sure whether it's my biased opinion, because I love the region so much, but I feel like you would be hard pressed in 2021 to say that Southwest Virginia is overlooked, Southwest Virginia is ignored. We can always do more, but I feel like the people of this region have truly put Southwest Virginia on the map.
I will completely agree with you, and I'll say that it's time for that message to shift. Mm-hmm. That's basically a needs-based message, right? We need more attention. We need more state resources. We need more federal resources, instead of that asset-based approach where look at what we're doing. And Will Payne just talked about that. He said we need to show it from the private sector, and then what attracts resources, the success. And I think we're making that. I think we're making that shift there. That's an example of it. But I've got something else. I got something in my hand here, and it's time for us to start wrapping up, I think. So what do you have? Tell me what. So Ben has a tradition on the downtown happy hour. They share what they're drinking.
Yep.
Ben, what are you tasting tonight?
You know, I'm going to be having a 3-notched brewing company, Appalachian Ale, and from what I understand, it was brewed with ingredients from Southwest Virginia.
Yeah, exactly. We have heard that, and we're going to get to taste it. But first, we're going to do a toast. So let's go ahead and get these puppies open. Oh, that sound! Oh, and I'm gonna have to. Yeah. Oh, there's a little head on that. Nice. Okay. And then before we do that, though, we want to thank the media services team at UVA Wise, who has knocked this out of the ballpark. Terrific team, the entire team at UVA Wise. We want to thank them. We really appreciate what you do for the region and our economy by pulling us together in this space. And then we want to thank all the participants and speakers, and we want to say thank you for being here. And we want to say cheers to a successful event. Here, and before we say that too, we got to also mention that May 25th of 2022.
We're doing it again, aren't we?
We're doing it again.
Yes.
And did you hear that was one day, May 25th?
Yeah.
We're really planning on doing it in person.
Yes.
So we're going to be able to do things like this with our friends and colleagues and toast to successes. And finally, before we do our toast and taste, I want to thank Appalachian Grains, Mountain Empire Community College, Southwest Virginia Farmers, a 3-Notch Brewery, and all of those strategic partners who make this beer possible.
Absolutely.
So, to the 6th annual Southwest Virginia Economic Forum. Cheers.
That's good too.
Oh, what are you tasting there?
I'm tasting a little bit of music with a touch of outdoor recreation and a whole lot of soul.
Oh yeah, I'm getting fresh barley and some, notes of regional economic progress.
I got that too. Fantastic.
Thank you, Ben Muldrow. We really appreciate you being here with us.
Well, guys, thank you so much for including me. You know, I'm a big fan of the region. I'm a big fan of UVA Wise and everything that you all have done to help foster this conversation. I'm always thrilled to be a part of the forum, and I just continue to thank you all for bringing together so many amazing people and really creating this amazing conversation. I mean, a region means nothing if the people of that region do not feel connected to one another. And I can truly say it. I say it every time we're together. There is not another place in this country that I feel more at home than when I go to Southwest Virginia. So cheers to you all. Thank you for including us, and keep doing the good work.
Thank you. And I've told everybody that we had a couple of other things that we needed to do. And we have some prize winners that we get to announce. And I'm really excited about it. So remember, we had the first prize, and that was Virginia Tourism Corporation is giving the getaway bag. And congratulations, Ryan Moore. You have won the VTC giveaway. And are you ready for it? There's another giveaway. The giveaway number 2, which was from Breaks Interstate Park, and that was the experience of viewing the elk. The winner for giveaway 2 is Nicole Hare. Congratulations, Nicole. Again, our team will be in touch with the 2 winners, and we'll figure out how to get your prizes to you. Well, I tell you, thanks for hanging in there with us. It doesn't get much better than this. We're honored that you spent the time with us. I'm inspired. We hope that you are digging into what you can do in your community, what you are doing in your community, making it even better, whether that's personally or as part of an organization or a business. Thank you for being here in the Southwest Virginia Forum, which we hope will continue as a place that brings us together to build a thriving future for our region. And thanks again for that, the lineup of speakers and participants. And finally, our sponsors. Again, I want to thank Appalachian Power, the Business Journal of Tri-Cities, Tennessee, Virginia, Go Virginia Region 1, and the University of Virginia's College at Wise. Thank you for participating, for sponsoring, and for investing in the region. And one more reminder, May 25th, 2022, we're going to see you there. And thanks for tuning in.